How are you feeling?
Well,
How long have you been here?
3 months, May 17th.
And what brought you?
That's difficult to answer.
To give you some idea.
I am not completely like other people.
What do you mean by that?
People dislike me because I am not completely like them. I am trying to do with my life something which few people try to do, and this influences my thinking and consequently my action.
What is it you're trying to do with your life?
Play the piano for people.
I'm not clear. How is it that playing the piano for people has eventually resulted in your being here in the hospital?
That's difficult to answer.
the end. There's a noise inside my head of crying people facing death. Is this the end? Is this the end? Oh, I'm burning in the stone. There's no place to hide. I'm burning in the stone. This is the final time. What have we done to the world? What have we done to the world? I'm burning in the stone. There's no place to hide. I'm burning in the stone. This is the final
Who the fuck is Karlyn? She's just some sweet lady. She's like in a knitting. She does like a knitting stream. She's like a knitting YouTuber. She does knitting.
What in the hell is going on with new YouTube notifications lately? What is going on? I am absolutely back in the shadow ban on this channel, which means we're all going to have to work together. If we want more people to actually be notified of the stream, we have to go through this every once in a while. We know how to break shadow bans, but everyone has to work together. Because honestly, guys, if I can't get people to come to the streams, there's no point in doing them. So here's the thing. If I can't get people to watch the streams, I can literally just do this on my own. I don't have to put on makeup. I don't have to be on the internet. I can literally just do this on my own. So if people want the streaming to continue, then we all need to work together. Everyone needs to make sure they're subscribed to the channel. Everyone needs to make sure they are liking the videos. If you are not subscribed to the channel, make sure you're subscribed, because that's how the videos get recommended. You know, people are confused. Like, people say this to me all the time. Every time, like, we break out of the YouTube shadow ban, they say, Karlyn, YouTube stopped showing me your content. And I said, I know. Do you know why it stopped doing that? Because you weren't subscribed and you didn't have notifications on and you didn't click on the videos. I promise you guys, if you guys click on videos of mine when they're served to you, YouTube will show you more videos of mine. If you stop clicking, this is how the algorithm works. It's like, yeah, I'm going to have to do a lot of fucking shorts. I hate doing YouTube shorts so much. But it's the only way to stay out of the shadow ban. It is literally the only way. So I am doing my part, and I'm doing more short videos. I need everyone else to do their part and to be liking the video and to remember that I go live at 5 p.m. every single day, Monday through Friday. This is another thing I don't understand about people. They're like, Karlyn, I just didn't know when you were streaming. Literally every day, Monday through Friday, except for Saturdays, when we do Saturdays at 6 p.m. That's all. We got to work together to keep it out of the shadow ban, guys. If you want people to have access to this information, then we all need to work together. And like I said, I'm deadly serious. I'm reevaluating a lot of stuff in terms of like my workload and what I'm doing and what I'm focusing on. And I'm deadly serious that if people don't come to the streams, if people don't, I've said this millions of times over the last several years, if people don't value the fact that I stream this stuff every day, I don't have to do it. Like, literally, I don't have to do it. I could be doing other things that make me more money than streaming. I could be spending more time writing. I could be spending more time doing merchandise. I could be spending more time working on the nonprofit. I could be spending more time doing other things. All right? So this is the deal. We're back in the shadow ban. We all need to come together, work together to get the channel out of the shadow ban, because if people don't come to streams, then I'm not going to do them anymore. And I'm going to go do other stuff instead. And we've got a lot of stuff to cover. But, you know, it is what it is. I don't have to cover it in this way. I get more views on Rumble some days than I do on YouTube now. That's just reality. And that confuses me because, like, I have almost no subscribers on Rumble. So why am I getting all these views on Rumble and not here? I just don't get it. Awkward day to be late. No, it's fine. It's fine. It's fine. I'm not mad at anyone. You know what? I mean, listen, it's a frustrating thing, right? It's a frustrating thing when, especially because we had so much progress a couple months ago, so many new people got delivered to the channel. It was awesome. And now we're back in the fucking shadow ban. And I knew this was going to happen. I said this was going to happen from the very beginning. Like, we had to ride the high while we had it. And then everyone just forgets. And part of the reason, too, is that people think that... Part of the reason, too, is people basically follow the news cycle. So it's like a couple months ago, people were really looking for a lot of information about the left. And now because conservative media is no longer covering what the left is doing, it's like, poof. People really care about the commies until the media stops covering them. And they're like, oh, I guess the commies went away. My favorite conservative commentator stopped talking about it, so I guess we won. Woke is dead. Did you guys see how quickly that turn happened, by the way? We went from them actually covering riots and protests and stuff like that in June. And by the way, the riots and the violence is still happening. It's not happening at the scale it was a couple months ago, but people understand, right? The violence and the militancy never stopped. And we're probably going to see an uptick of it in the next couple of weeks for Labor Day, I think. So the violence and the militancy never really stopped. There's protests today. They're still protesting going on in Los Angeles, and in Portland, they basically like been blockading the ICE facility for God knows how long. They're doing all sorts of crazy shit in Seattle. Like this stuff is still happening, but conservative media stops covering it, and then oh my God, we suddenly start seeing all these people saying woke is dead, woke is dead, woke is dead. Do you guys think it was a coincidence that the same conservative bullshit artists that lie to their audience every single day are now cheering woke is dead at exactly the same time that the news media just stops covering anything the left is doing? Do you guys think that's a coincidence? The news, like, they were covering riot coverage for like several weeks. It was fucking great. We were like, holy shit, people are actually paying attention. And then the media stops covering the riot stuff. And then all of a sudden, the conservative bullshit influencers are going, woke is dead, woke is dead, woke is dead. I'm sure it's just all a coincidence. And in the meantime, the left just marches on and they just do whatever it is they do. And there ain't nothing I can do about it except, talk about it on the internet. And so that is what we are going to do. People, make sure to mount the like button for me. Hopefully these viewer numbers come up. If the viewer numbers don't come up, I'm just going to end the stream and go do something else. I'm going to start being militant about this. I have to yell at you guys every once in a while. And of course, it doesn't help the people here. The people here are the people here. I'm more so talking about the people who might see this later. Like, if you guys don't value the streams, then I don't have to do them, okay? I really don't. Anyway, hopefully the numbers come up. We're going to see. We're going to take this step by step. I actually had a long stream planned today. But if the streaming numbers don't go up, we're going to do maybe a third of what I had planned. And people might not like that, and people might not like that. But we're going to see. The amount of streaming that we do today will be directly dependent on if people actually show up to the stream. So if you guys want people to show up to the stream, now would be a good time to start sharing it. Now would be a good time to make sure you've mounted the like button. Now would be a good time to push it out on all the different platforms. And the amount of people that we are all able to get to this stream together to break out of the fuck off YouTube shadow ban that I'm perpetually in anytime this shit happens, because people forget it. Like, the fact that I still have to remind people to like the video is like enough of a headache to me, to be honest with you. If those numbers don't come up, we're getting a much shorter stream today. I'm just gonna that's gonna be the rule from now on. So there's no reason why those numbers can't come up, and when people don't value things, they go away. And that's going to be the way it is. So I guess we'll have to see. We'll have to see how it goes. Now, the reason I said we had a long stream planned today, and we may or may not do that long stream, but the reason I said we have a long stream planned today is we are going to watch a documentary. And this is not just any old documentary. This is a documentary that came out in the 90s. And you know what? I like watching old documentaries because old documentaries tend to have a lot of obviously historical footage in them. But old documentaries also kind of like anything like pre-2000-ish, maybe a little bit like later than that, maybe like mid 2000-ish. We tend to get a perspective on these things that was much more kind of like overt. And you know, it gives us insight into things that have gone on in history, and actually puts video to it, puts photos to it, puts that visual to it, that I think is really helpful when you're talking about, you know, when it comes to queer. As you guys know, I'm working on a book about queer Marxism right now. I've been working on it for a while, but now I'm actually pushing out a ton of writing on it. I've been working on the research for this for probably like 2 years now. And my contention is that the current queer activist set that we are dealing with in the United States is the result of a almost 100-year journey that started back basically in around World War II. Everything starts at World War II. Everything, you can date literally everything back to World War II. The premise of my book is that there has always been two distinct lines of activism when it comes around gay rights or queer liberation. There are the normie gay people, who I'm going to call like the liberal gay rights activists. These are like Democrats and progressives and liberals who literally just wanted gay people to be able to get married and be able to visit their partners in the hospital and to get insurance and to get all that normal stuff. This is an assimilationist attitude. This is saying, like, us gay people, we're not any different than straight people. We want to be able to do all the same things that you do, and we just want to be able to live in society, and we just need a couple legal protections to help us exist in society, and we're not trying to do anything with kids, and we're not doing anything weird. It's like they literally just wanted to get married. This was the gay rights activist set. They wanted to be part of respectable society, things like that. So that's one strain that we're dealing with. Alongside that, you have militant queer activism that is specifically about abolishing capitalism and overthrowing our society. These are anti-assimilationists. These are people who did not want to be part of polite society. They didn't want to get married. They didn't want to have a family. They don't care about insurance because they're not getting married and they're not having a family. They don't care about any of the stuff that the liberal normie gay rights activists cared about. We are dealing with two separate strains of activism. And those separate strains of activism have always existed back to the 1950s. And I know that because I just released, and actually I just updated the first chapter. I just released a draft chapter of the Queer Marxism book. It's called The Mattachine Society, which I'm probably going to find out I'm pronouncing wrong, but that's all right. I actually released a draft chapter of this last week. And then over the weekend, I banged out a ton of writing on this book this weekend. I have significantly updated the chapter from when I originally released it. So if you read the first iteration of this chapter, it's about 3 times longer now, and it's much better written, and it goes into much more detail on all of this. So I definitely recommend checking out the update. This is over on the Red Menace Collective Substack. That's redmenacecollective.substack.com. This is the Substack you can join if you want to read all of my book drafts before they actually get published. This allows you to follow along with the creation of the book in real time and stuff like that. It is separate from my main Substack. And yeah, the new one had a significantly more info, significantly expanded, which is part of my writing process, right? And people who've been following my writing with the books and stuff, you guys know I do this. I do like a draft of something that maybe I'm sketching something out. I'm getting some ideas on the plate. I'm trying to put things together, and then I'll go back later and I'll significantly expand on those ideas, or I'll edit them, or I'll do something with it. But the first chapter I write is almost never the thing that actually makes it in the book, and you can follow along with the progress as I do this with the Red Menace Collective Substack. Was Massachusetts one of the first states to approve gay marriage? Yeah, I believe Massachusetts was actually the first state to approve it. I know Vermont was the first state with civil unions. Yay. But I'm pretty sure Massachusetts was the first gay marriage state. Kazmar, thank you for the super chat. Appreciate that. So in the writing of this book, so what happened? So we're going back to the 1950s, and we have and what the Mattachine Society actually was it was a group of 5 gay men who were communists. They were card-carrying trained communists. They were members of the Communist Party. But back in the 50s, the Communist Party did not allow gay people. This is one of the irony of ironies that many people don't understand. Back in the 50s, the Communist Party USA actually had in their documentation that they considered homosexuality to be a bourgeois indulgence, and they didn't allow it in the Communist Party. So if you were gay, you could not be in the Communist Party. They would kick you out. And so there were 5 gay men that were like, this is kind of bullshit, and they started this thing called the Mattachine Society, and basically their entire contention was being gay is just like being an oppressed class. This is the origin point of queer Marxism. We've talked about queer Marxism as this thing that it has a Marxist foundation, but then at some point the bat met the pig and they mutated off into a different strain of Marxism that eventually became queer Marxism, which is much more about cultural Marxism and stuff like that. It's the origin point for a lot of the violent militancy we see. You see these people at protests all the time today. We'll talk about that another time. But this is the origin point for that mutation. It started with the Mattachine Society, where they were like, we're a group of communists and we're creating a communist front organization during the McCarthy era because we want to say that being gay is part of being an oppressed class, and that idea all comes back to this. So what happened with the Mattachine Society is it was started by the queer, anti-capitalist, anti-assimilationists. They didn't call themselves queer at the time, but that's what it turned into later. And then the Mattachine Society got a ton of publicity, because basically there was this big gay rights case in Los Angeles in which the police were trying to entrap homosexual men and get them arrested and stuff like that. Well, one homosexual man fought back, and there was this big there was this big trial where they put this gay guy on trial, but the gay guy actually put the police on trial for entrapping him in the first place, and that essentially got a lot of publicity among gay men in Los Angeles. And so what happened is the Mattachine Society had a massive influx into the organization, where like thousands more people all of a sudden joined the organization overnight. Now, they weren't joining the organization because it was a communist organization. They didn't even know it was a communist organization. They were joining the organization because they thought it was like, oh, here's a bunch of gay people fighting for gay rights, and oh, we just had this success with this court case, and so we're going to go fight for gay rights. So it was more like the people who joined it were the liberal, normie, gay rights activists that are like, we just literally want to be treated fairly, and we want to be upstanding members of society and all that. But this was an organization that was created by and run by communists who were using it as a communist front organization. Well, eventually that came out. And then there was a rebellion in the Mattachine Society. So essentially there was this article in a newspaper in the early 1950s that was like, this Mattachine Society is a communist front organization. And then all the members of it were like, we didn't join a communist organization. And then there was a big meeting, and basically they ousted the communist leadership, and the Mattachine Society, which still exists today, by the way, it became a liberal, normie, gay rights organization that was pro-assimilation, pro-capitalism, pro-America, all that stuff. So you had the communist leadership kind of get pushed to the underground. But this is the thread that always existed, and this is a theme that I saw throughout the research I did for this book, is that literally every single generation has the normie gay rights activists and then the queer anti-capitalist, anti-assimilation activists, and they're going side by side. And there are constantly battles between these two factions. Do we try to assimilate to normal society, or do we try to overthrow normal society? And this is the thing that's been going on for the past 80 plus years in leftist activism around this issue. And we've seen these groups continue to splinter and splinter and splinter. And we've talked in the past about how the gay marriage debate, which, by the way, if you guys didn't see, apparently the Republicans are trying to get gay marriage overturned in the Supreme Court now. Fucking geniuses. Overturning gay marriage will be the thing that will lead to the destruction of the nuclear family. I promise you, if Republicans and conservatives get their way, this will lead to the destruction of the nuclear family. And I'll briefly explain why if you want a greater in-depth explanation. I have a video about it on my Substack. I also put it up on the YouTube channel. I go into much more detail in that video than I'm going to go into here. But essentially, the great schism that took place between the normie gay rights activists, like the Human Rights Campaign and stuff like that, and the radical queer Marxists, the biggest one, took place in the mid-2000s because they were fighting over the issue of gay marriage. The normie gay rights activists wanted gay marriage to be legalized because they just wanted to get married. The queer Marxists did not want gay marriage to be legalized. They never wanted gay marriage to be legalized. They thought the Human Rights Campaign were stupid for spending so much time and resources on trying to legalize gay marriage because they didn't want to give gay people an institution that could assimilate them to the norms of the state. Homonormativity is a slur that's used by queer Marxists to say gays that are assimilating to norms of the straights, like getting married, being in a monogamous relationship, buying a house, having a normal job, having kids, stuff like that. This is the big schism that took place. So the normie gay activists won. Gay marriage was legalized in 2015. And then what happened after that? All of the normie gay rights activists went home. They said, okay, we won. We can get married now. We don't need to keep doing this anymore. And they stopped being gay activists because they had won their issue, right? And so what happened is after 2015, there was a huge vacuum created in this activist community, but there were all these organizations that had existed for years and years and years and years and years to fight for gay rights, right? But all of a sudden, they got what they wanted. They got married. And so then the queer activists took over the organizations, and that's when you started seeing all the non-binary stuff come in. That's when the gay straight alliance in high schools got changed to the gender sexuality alliance. That's when you start seeing queer and non-binary pop up everywhere because they literally co-opted the institutions after gay marriage got legalized. There is no bigger win, I promise you, that you can deliver to the left than to repeal gay marriage. Because do you know what's going to happen if that happens? All of the normie gay people who literally just wanted to get married are going to go, what the ever-loving fuck? We fought for decades for this. We had it. We were all fine. Why are you fucking with our families? And they're going to get really pissed off at the right. They're going to get really, 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 really pissed off. And then what's going to happen? The queer Marxists are going to be like, we told you guys this was going to happen. Because the queer Marxists have literally been screaming at the normie gay rights activists that this is going to happen for decades, guys. For decades. Going back to the 50s. The queer activists have been saying to the normie gay rights activists, don't buy into this. It's not going to work out. You don't want to assimilate to them. They're going to throw you under the bus. This is what they have been telling them for decades. Now, people who are not in this subculture don't understand this, but this has been an ongoing fight. And so you repeal gay marriage, you're going to have all these gay people that are like, we literally just wanted to get married and be left alone. And then all of a sudden, the right has destroyed their family. The right has destroyed their ability to just operate as normal human beings in society, and the left is going, we told you this was going to happen, assholes. Which direction do you think they're going to go? All of those gay people who just wanted to get married and literally just wanted to be left alone, do you think they're going to run to the right on this after the right destroyed their family? Or do you think they're going to use it as an opportunity to radicalize them to the queer activist left that not only want to destroy the nuclear family, but that want to overthrow the entire system that exists in America that supports the American dream? If gay marriage is repealed, I promise you, you are not going to see a bigger movement to radicalize all of these people to the queer Marxist left. You are not going to see, this is going to result in substantially more pushback on the idea of gender. This is going to result in substantially more attacks on the nuclear family and on parental rights and on the entire institution, because it will radicalize so many people who were literally like, we just wanted to get married and you couldn't even let us have that. This is a colossal mistake that the right is making. It is a boneheaded mistake because they never bothered to learn about the enemy that they were fighting. This is why I scream all the time. You have to learn about the enemy you're fighting. If you don't know the enemy you're fighting, you will not beat them. In fact, you're going to probably hand them a victory. And this is the biggest victory the queer Marxist activist left ever could get. Ever. And if you want to learn more, I provide you with direct receipts in that video. You can find it on my Substack, Why Overturning Gay Marriage Will Destroy the Nuclear Family. You can also find it on the YouTube channel. I posted it on Twitter too. You can watch the full video with receipts there. And this is something that if you read queer literature, if you follow this stuff like I do, it is so obvious what is about to happen. And I know that many people who've been following this stuff with me in my chat for the past couple of years, because this is what I document publicly on this channel, everyone, I promise you, in the chat, people can answer for themselves. If you've been following this content with me for a while, you understand what's about to happen, right? This is going to destroy the nuclear family, and conservatives don't even see it coming because they never bothered to understand the enemy that they were fighting. They couldn't just sit down and listen. They couldn't just read a paper. They couldn't consider an idea that didn't come from one of their conservative bullshit con artists. Conservatives get upset with me when I tell them you need to learn about your enemy. They say, no, what do we do? And I say, sit your ass down and listen. And they don't want to do it. And then they make unforced errors exactly like this over and over and over and over and over again. They play the short game. They don't understand the long arc of history. The left does. So I'm continuing to work on my book about queer Marxism, and it seems a pretty good time for it to come out if I'm being honest about it. And so today I want to watch a documentary. And I hope that we will get enough interest in the documentary on the channel that we can watch the whole thing, but we'll have to see how it goes. I was doing some research earlier and I found this old documentary, and it's uploaded to this random YouTube channel with not even any subscribers. And this is a documentary that came out on PBS in 1995. And it's called The Question of Equality, a 4-part PBS documentary on the history of the U.S. gay rights movement, which aired in 1995. Now, sadly, we only have 3 of the 4 parts, so YouTube took out the second part. But the second part, I looked it up, and I can rent it for $13, but I don't think we need to, because the second part that YouTube took away is mostly about the conservative backlash, which I think would be interesting, but I think we can just watch the other 3 parts. I don't think we actually need to watch that. So we've got 3 parts. They're each about an hour long, and I thought we could watch them today. And we're going to see a lot of archival footage, and I want to see how much of what they cover in this documentary is related to queer liberation and how much of it is related to the normie gay rights movement. And I want people to pay attention. You're going to see, what I'm betting is going to happen is you're going to see a shift back and forth between the two, where sometimes they're going to be talking about queer liberation and sometimes they're going to be talking about the normie gay rights movement. And I think that that's the tension that you need to constantly look for, because both of those types of activists are always involved, and it's a matter of who is going to win the day. Is the anti-assimilationist going to win the day, or is the assimilationist going to win the day? And even if that's all the nuance you understand about this type of activism, that's still more than the average conservative, I promise you. So we're going to be watching that. And that's what we're going to do today. Before we get into that, if you want to read the first draft chapter for the book Queer Marxism, you can currently find it over on the Red Menace Collective Substack. This is a premium Substack where I publish draft chapters of my books before they actually become books. I actually have about 7 chapters of this book written. I'm editing it. I'm going to be releasing it slowly. There's going to be about 20 chapters in this book, 20. It's a crazy long book, but it's going to be a definitive history of this type of activism. And it's actually so much different than what I thought this book was going to be when I first started writing it, because when I first started writing it, I thought I was going to be explaining more about what queer Marxism is, but no, I'm actually going into the history, and I'm explaining what queer Marxism is via telling the story of the history of this thing, which I think is a more compelling, interesting way to do it. And I think it's actually really good. I'm actually really enjoying writing it. Thanks for all you do, even finding the stuff to show us. Thank you, No Mayo. I do appreciate it. Naruto said, idiot conservatives might be about to make communists very happy. Everyone go watch Karlyn's video. Yup, that's the gay marriage thing what we were talking about. Exactly. Appreciate that. So you guys can check out that chapter over on the redmenaccollective.substack.com. Make sure you subscribe while you're there. This is not to be confused with my main Substack, which is Karlyn, Karlyn.substack.com. Head over here if you want to find that clip I posted earlier today. All sorts of clips and podcasts and breakdowns on that Substack. And of course, this is the best place to support the work I'm doing with $8 a month, $80 a year. If you want to do that, I really, really, really appreciate it. And you guys can help keep me independent, which would be awesome. Also, announcement. The Unwoke Art Store is dead. And in its place, we are renaming the Unwoke Art Merchandise Store to Red Menace Supply Company. Keeping with the Red Menace theme that I have been kind of like slowly rolling out all year long, I am renaming my merchandise store. It's getting a new set of URLs. It's getting a whole new brand refresh. You can't currently get into the store because I'm working on updating it. I was hoping to have it done by the time of this stream started, but I don't, and so that's okay. It'll be done over the next couple days. But we are updating the name of the store. You can still get there by going to unwokeart.com. That link will always work, but I decided to change it because I can't stand the word woke anymore. I just can't. And it looks fucking cool. Come on. I love the Red Menace theme. The Red Menace brand is kind of like my brand. I love the Plague Doctor stuff. It's going to have a lot of awesome designs in it. So make sure you're following along on the newly minted Twitter account, Red Menace Supply. The store will be coming back online soon, and we're going to have lots more great like limited edition merch and stuff like that. Yes, rest in peace Unwoke Art. I did love the name. I love the alliteration, but I can't with the word woke anymore. I just can't. I just cannot with the word woke. James Lindsay fucked it up for all of us. And it means nothing now. And it's like, it broke my heart. It really did. It broke my heart to rename my merch store. I was like, I can't do it. And then I had to. Because James Lindsay fucked it up. And sometimes you just have to kill your darlings. Killing your darlings is like the worst thing. It's like a writing concept where essentially you write what you feel is like the very best part of your book. But by the time the rest of the book gets built around it, it doesn't work anymore. And then you're like, no, this is like the best part. And you had the best time writing it, but you have to take it out of the book because for the greater picture, it just doesn't work anymore. I had to kill my darling of my Unwoke Art Store. But you know what? We got a new name. We got a new brand. It's more in line with what I'm doing now anyway. And you know what? Long live Red Menace Supply Company. I don't think there's any chance of James fucking this one up. So that's what we're going to do there. All right. Let's see. Anything else? No. All right, guys. Let's get into our documentary. Again, make sure you have mounted the like button if you have not already. We're going to get into our documentary. And we're going to see what happens. All right, let's get started.
Creation of lesbian and gays struggle for their rights.
Being projected in its negative form.
To the point where Mr. Average Citizen is beginning to notice these things on the street.
I believe I have a God-given right.
He knew how to survive, and that was important.
They move in all walks of life. Only at night do they show their true colors.
Did Judy Garland's death start the Stonewall riots?
I do remember that Judy Garland died. A lot of people thought that there was a lot of added tension.
How much pain did it take to form a lesbian and gay movement?
Gay power!
Major funding for the question of equality is provided by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. Additional funding is provided by these and additional...
Now, we all have to keep in mind, right, that even back then, in 1995, when this was created, it was still propaganda. And that actually serves us well in this case because we're actually watching, what is it, 95, 2005, 2000? We're watching a 30-year-old piece of propaganda, guys. This is a 30-year-old piece of propaganda that was created right when queer was starting to really differentiate itself from gay. That happened in the early 90s.
Funders. A complete list is available from ITVS, the independent television service.
Cops already spotted. Oh, 1965. Compton's Cafeteria Riot. That was in 66. I hope they talk about it.
America changed because of working black Southerners who decided they were going to take on America's apartheid. I did voter registration work in Alabama, and I saw a working class black family take on history.
Commie.
So, but at night when we all gathered and everybody told stories, I couldn't tell my story. And at that moment, keeping the secret of my queerness did not seem the biggest thing to me.
She was calling herself queer in 1995? That doesn't mean gay, it means a far-left political ideology.
And in fact, I came home with a man, a wonderful man, who, when I was leaving with him, said to me, the one group of people I hate are homosexuals.
7825, code 6, 105 North Avenue 52.
Well, I think we're getting into an area now where we can debate what is an illness, or whether it is an illness or not. I happen to subscribe to the belief that it is a tragic illness, a neurosis, the same as many other neuroses.
How to get any contact unit on that trouble 600 North Mont, 600 North Mont, further.
Just going to the bar meant taking on 50s America. It meant being a woman who was different from the protected woman, the domesticated woman. It felt subversive, just going out in the streets at 2 o'clock in the morning, knowing that I was going to a place that was illegal.
Police would come in. Sometimes the raids would not, you almost wouldn't know what was happening. They'd just tell you have to stop dancing. They'd put on a white light. You'd see a policeman go in the back room, usually to get a payoff. I remember certain cities were very severe. They would put people's names and addresses where they lived and place of employment in the papers. So when someone got caught in a gay bar raid, they lost their job.
The gay bar is a social meeting place for homosexuals. The film you are now watching is purposely being projected in its negative form. The scenes were photographed with telescopic lenses from a hidden vantage point.
It's our duty to know what goes on around the jurisdictions that surrounding our particular area. And the situation is rapidly approaching the appalling stage, or the disgusting stage, to the point where Mr. Average Citizen is beginning to notice these things on the streets.
Disavow! 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 Wow! Wow! Hang on! Can we just reflect for the fact, obviously, we disavow. Obviously, we disavow. But there was a time on PBS in 1995 in which they put the word faggot across the screen and then defined it as a bundle of sticks used for kindling. Obviously, we disavow. Disavow totally and completely. I'm just commenting on the fact that this would never, ever, 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 ever happen today. And this was in a liberal documentary. Wow. Okay.
The cop came up and asked me to move. And then he proceeded to hit me with the billy club. I know he was jabbing me in my stomach.
Sylvia Rivera, that's Stonewall.
You know, my ribs. And all this time he was, you know, calling me queer, cocksucker, fag.
I was mauled, literally felt up and mauled by these police. And that's how, you know, they got their kicks off. They would just feel you up, and they would say things like, I remember this cop saying, oh, she's a woman, you think you're a man, this is a woman, she got tits, or whatever. And so you felt little.
The mafia guys would run the place because in order to run a gay bar, you had to pay protection money because it was illegal to have a bar where gay people congregated. It was illegal for us to touch each other in public. In the one that I went to, the Sea Colony, there were two rooms. There was the outer room where you sort of sat around and drank and got hustled for watered-down drinks and got to pay more than you would at any other bar in the city except a gay bar. In the inner room, they had a jukebox and you could dance with each other. You know, it was like going through several stages of hiding from the rest of the world.
It made the community tight because of we had someone against us, you know. So it was just a fearful, I can't explain it more than, it was fearful, but we knew what we were doing. And I think that's an important thing to say, that we knew the motions, we knew the dance, we knew how to survive, and that was important.
The first public demonstration of homosexuals, I remember, were the Mattachine Society, and then certain homophile groups, so that was the term they gave themselves. And I recall in 1965, I attended my first national conference, and I met...
Okay, now remember the timeline I gave you earlier. So first of all, I'm pronouncing Mattachine Society correctly, and that makes me happy. But remember the timeline that I gave you. So this guy's talking about 1965. The Mattachine Society was started in 1950. And it was a communist organization for the first 3 years. Then at the end of the third year, basically all of the gay people who just thought they were joining a gay rights organization and didn't think they were joining a communist organization overthrew the communist leadership of the Mattachine Society, and they ousted them entirely. And so after 1953, the Mattachine Society became one of the respectable organizations that was just like, we just want to be normal gay people, and we like capitalism, and we don't want to overthrow everything. So this is talking about 1965. The Mattachine Society still exists today, but this is 12 years after the communist leadership was ousted, and I just want people to have that context.
Some well-dressed, middle-aged people who were the activists at that particular time, and they were very courageous. On the other hand, they weren't people I would necessarily party with.
See?
A lot of organizations wonder why more people don't come out of the closet than directly into some sort of militant or activist organization. And I think a lot of people can't make that jump. It's like jumping into cold water, and some of them like to get their feet a little wet first.
We were a couple hundred people scattered around the country, maybe only a half a dozen people in each major town. In New York City, you didn't have 10 gay activists in the whole city. We felt it was very important to make the best appearance possible. If you want someone to pay attention to what you're saying, you want to look impressive. The insanity of the day was that every homosexual was a communist, a traitor, not only just effeminate, a child molester.
They move in all walks of life. Except for hairdressing and a few other occupations, their presence is unnoticed. They work to conceal their sexual orientation by day, and only at night do they show their true colors.
I think the homophile movement basically wanted to just set the record straight, and that was, hey, wait a minute, we're like everyone else. We vary. You know, some of us are nice looking, some of us are ugly, some of us brilliant, some of us are very dumb. But also that we're respectable people, that we're real people.
I wasn't going to march in any picket line with a sign saying what I do in my bedroom is my own business. I mean, I was the kind of hippie, anti-war movement, anti-establishment person. I thought, no way. I mean, we wanted to change the world. We wanted to, to get rid of the way things were. We didn't want to be a part of it. I mean, you have all that Bruce Bauer stuff now. It's the same way. No, we wanted a new world where we could all live together freely.
Our day will come. Our day will
Stonewall. This will be Stonewall.
Nightfall, creating a world of contradictions,
Never mind.
of paradoxes in life.
On June 28, 1969, I was escorting two women from Boston through the village. One of them was an ex-nun, and the other was sort of an old-line butch. So, hot as blazes, humid, full moon, we're touring the village.
The tourist is lured by a sense of adventure in losing himself in a modern Casbah.
The village was not the place for people of color at that time. To me, the rumors were this is where you could be gay. There wasn't many things for people of color, but we would go down there.
I had worked late that night, and I lived on Waverly Place, where I still live. And I was coming home, and I was walking down Christopher Street, the first block, and I saw a police car pull up to the Stonewall.
I was in there, I was dancing, I was with my lover. I was stoned out. I was having a good time. And the lights went on. Queens started being filed out and being, put into police cars. People started throwing change at the bar to the police. This is your payoff. Gay brothers and sisters and drag queens and street kids and hustlers just throwing this money at these people like, hey, you ain't shit. You've been treating us like shit all these years? Now it's our turn.
Without any reason that you could see at that particular time, a riot suddenly started. It took very little for these kids. These kids were very angry. They were white, Hispanic, and black. A lot of them came from good homes. They'd been thrown out, they'd been badly abused. Police brutality was commonplace. It was commonplace for them to be beaten up. So anything could set them off, anything at all. The street kids started the riot. There's no doubt about that at all.
Someone handed me a Molotov cocktail, and I had never seen one except what I have seen on the news and riots and whatnot. And I'm like, but what am I supposed to do with this? I said, well, I'm going to light it and you throw it. I'm like, fine, you light it, I'm throwing.
The woman from Boston sort of jumped back and said, what's going on here? And I said, oh, that's just a riot. We have them in New York all the time.
They had a little song they sang, which is, we are the Stonewall Girls, we wear our hair in curls. We don't wear underwear, we show our pubic hair. And they would kick like the Rockettes, so the tactical police force would go crazy and they would run after them. Those 5 or 6 kids would run down the street, the TPF would go after them, but then 5 or 6 more would then run after the TPF behind them and taunt them. It was almost like a ballet, I mean, up and down the streets, wherever the TPF went, they would be chasing people, but then there would be people chasing them.
And I was there watching this, and I thought, oh my God, this is what we plan all the time. I mean, this is a revolutionary situation. The lumpen have seized the time, you know?
It was just amazing how word of mouth through the bars, through the clubs, everybody was there.
It was my first time to really be able to stand with a white gay man and be talking about the same thing, because that was unheard of.
Bonfires and trash baskets and barrels being thrown through windows, and all I could think is, oh my God, they're gonna burn up a little old Italian lady, or some child's gonna be killed, and we're gonna be the boogeyman of the 70s.
See, a lot of people kind of put the Stonewall incident as the start of the gay rights movement, but that's wrong. It's just flat out wrong. The Mattachine Society is far more of like a founding moment that I've been able to find of the gay rights movement. And also there was another organization, and I'm gonna butcher the pronunciation of it, so I'm just not gonna do it. But there's another organization I'm writing about in the book that basically came about right after the Mattachine Society, which was a group of lesbians that were fighting for lesbian rights. But again, they were doing it on the air of respectability. It's like Daughters of something, starts with the letter B. I forget exactly the name of it, but because I don't know how to pronounce it is the thing. I don't know how to pronounce it, and I'll figure it out later. But it, like, to say that Stonewall was the first gay rights thing that happened, that's just not true. There was also the Compton's cafeteria riot that took place 3 years prior to Stonewall in San Francisco in the Tenderloin, that was kind of like a mini version of Stonewall. And so, you know, people kind of argue all they want about what actually happened at Stonewall. What I actually think is much more interesting to argue about is what happened before Stonewall that led up to it, and why is it that we're forgetting all this stuff that happened before? Why is it just this one thing that is considered to be the start of it when it wasn't the start of it at all? This shit was going, yes, this is it. Yes. Yes, that's it. I don't know how to say that. I don't know how to say it. I'm gonna have to get the AI to teach me. I don't know how to say it. We'll talk about that when I finish the chapter.
I may be the only person in New York who does not claim to have been in the Stonewall Inn that night. I don't remember exactly where I was. I do remember that Judy Garland died, and Judy Garland, of course, was a great icon, particularly of gay men. So a lot of people thought that there was a lot of added tension because people were upset because Judy Garland died. Personally, I think it was just a coincidence.
It was just a coincidence. It didn't have to do with the other. God damn,
I think there was not a coincidence. That was in 1969, during the Vietnam War, you know, in the wake of the Black Panther and other social movements, civil rights. I think they couldn't have happened without the political events.
Stonewall was the birth of the radical movement.
No, it wasn't.
And up until that point,
no, it wasn't.
Gay people had never been considered radical.
That's
it was just
not true.
Unheard of.
But okay, not true. God, I'm gonna like murder this fruit fly that's flying around me. Okay, hopefully the sound comes back. They probably just had to edit it for a YouTube thing or something. I hope. Does the sound come back? Oh my God! We need the sound to come back.
Coined groups in front. I saw an announcement that there was a meeting of something called the Gay Liberation Front at the alternate U. I thought, wow, liberation, gay, you know, because the old groups called themselves homophiles, gay lovers. You get it? You don't have to be gay to love one. Sort of like a cat lover. You're not a cat, right? So liberation, I thought their radical front, the Vietnamese Liberation Front, I raced right over to go to a meeting.
When we first started out, we were all focused on, you know, gay liberation, taking the spirit of Stonewall into the streets, just making ourselves more visible as a political organization, trying to get more and more men and women to join us. And, you know, we were not going to be controlled by the police or the mafia or anybody else.
We coined mottos like gay is good. To call ourselves gay was very radical, and to say, look, we're okay. We're not going to change. Just love us or leave us alone, you know? It was sort of like America, love it or leave it. Just get out of our way.
It used to be that homosexuals of both sexes were the strangers in our midst, invisible to most of us, hiding from sight out of fear of persecution, both social and legal. Now they are out in the open, out of the closet, as they say, demanding fair and equal treatment. There's a generation gap here, too. The younger members of the new Gay Liberation Front call the older, more conservative Mattachine Society the NAACP of the gay movement.
Okay.
There were no...
So again, you're seeing that dichotomy that I was talking about earlier. You had the Mattachine Society, which at this point, none of the gay people even wanted to be a part of the Mattachine Society because the Mattachine Society was considered boring, right? That was the normie LGBT, like the normie gay rights organization. They were the Democrats. And then you had the queer activists who were like, the Gay Liberation Front was like a queer activist, like an early queer activist organization. Listen again.
Equal treatment. There's a generation gap here, too. The younger members of the new Gay Liberation Front call the older, more conservative Mattachine Society the NAACP of the gay movement.
There were no specific leaders. There was no structure. Robert's Rules of Order was sneered at and thrown out. There was no structure. It was total chaos. It was chaos. It was mad. It was madness. But it was creative.
A few people would get an idea, let other people know, and we had an action on our hands. I'll give you an example of how one happened. This guy, Diego Vanellis, got arrested during a raid on a gay bar. And he freaked out because he was here in this country illegally, and he was afraid he'd be deported. He jumped out of a window in the police station and impaled himself on a spike fence.
What?
They had to cut away the fence and take him to the hospital before they got the spikes out of his body.
Wow.
We were outraged. And very shortly after that, I think at a gay liberation meeting, people decided to have a demonstration, and we just marched up and down the street yelling and screaming and went to the police station and carried on.
When the police confronted our group, as compared to some of the other groups, they were in for a big surprise, though. Because as they would be putting on their riot gear, their shields and their face masks and nightsticks, we would link arms and do a line dance with high kicks, and this would so confuse them. It was very unlikely they were going to club down people who were dancing.
Get your motor running.
I was in a group that went around the country and organized gay liberation fronts around the country. And we might have, I think we set up about 40 chapters. Most of them were on university campuses. We'd go and we'd talk, and there might be a gay group on the university, or there was someone who wanted to form one.
We tended to hop in a car or a van or rent a van at a moment's notice, and 5 or 6 of us take off for Milwaukee or Austin, Texas, or New York or Boston for a gay liberation meeting.
When I went to Los Angeles, I was one of these people who, I wasn't bisexual, I was bicoastal, you know? In Los Angeles, yeah, it was the same thing. There was a GLF with people like Morris Kite, Jim Kilhefner. It was a very active group out in LA as well.
We are involved in a political struggle, not only for freedom, but for first-class citizenship in this country.
Okay, they've had to take the sound. They probably edited it for the music. So we'll just look at some of the imagery because this is interesting to me. Isn't it crazy how similar it looks now? I hate that they had to edit the music out. I just want to hear the freaking documentary. I tried finding this documentary somewhere else to watch it. I couldn't find it anywhere. So we'll just let it go. Whatever, we don't get the cool music. But look at this. Doesn't this all look oddly familiar?
I used to bring a baseball bat to the meetings, or softball bat, and I really wasn't going to hit people with it. By that time, we were meeting over at the church, and people were not only all around the floor, they were sitting up on, I remember there were sort of raised areas, so people were everywhere, they were shouting, and there were poles in the room. And I would take the bat and hit the pole, because I couldn't really outshout some of these guys, and bang it on the floor.
The men were very vocal, and the women were expected to hand out leaflets and make coffee, and we were allowed to participate in the actions, but we were not in the beginning. We were not the planners of the actions.
But eventually, the GLF women went off, and this was the beginning of a group we called Radical Lesbians. The Radical Lesbians got together around a specific action. And that action was the Second Congress to Unite Women. We were very upset that here was going to be a major conflict.
Can I tell you guys? I have a whole chapter in the book on lesbian separatism. I now know more about lesbian separatism than I have ever wanted to know. And I didn't realize this is like what they're talking about right now was a whole big thing.
And there was not a single panel, not a single workshop that would address lesbianism. On top of that, Betty Friedan had called us the Lavender Menace. She said that we were a menace that was going to destroy the women's movement. There were many, many lesbians in the women's liberation movement, but people didn't want the women's movement to be called a bunch of dykes, even if they were a bunch of dykes.
When a feminist was called a lesbian, it was like, oh, it was like, waving a crucifix in front of a vampire. It's like, oh, not me. And, we wanted to raise their consciousness that
we need to look
that wasn't such a bad word after all. That loving another woman was not a terrible crime. So we knew where it was going to be held. We had the whole layout. So we figured out who was going to sit where and whatever. So, next day they come, they all file into this auditorium. It's all filled up. They're all waiting for it to begin. Just as Betty or whoever it was went to, grab the microphone to welcome everybody. The lights, Jesse and I, we took that thing, lights all went out, pitch black. Well, they were freaking out. And when the lights go back on, the aisles were lined with these lavender menaces and the whole front of the auditorium. And Martha Shelley grabbed that microphone from whoever it was, and she introduced us as the Lavender Menace and said we were there to talk about the issue of lesbianism and how it applied to the women's liberation movement.
Signs all over the auditorium on the walls. Take a lesbian to lunch. Lavender Jane loves you. Well, naturally, the invited guest speakers who had their speeches prepared didn't want to abandon their speeches, but everybody else in the audience did. They said, hey, this is live, this is happening, this is real, let's talk about it.
For me, the Congress to Unite Women, that Lavender Menace action, was the moment at which we could say, as a group, to feminists, we're not going to take this anymore. We're here, we're a large part, and you're simply not going to pretend that lesbian rights don't exist.
I remember the march, and it was like a hodgepodge of all sorts of political groups. It was not just gay people, because there weren't enough of us, to be honest with you, to make a dent. But it was a wonderful feeling to be there. It was wonderful. There were certain marches that stand out more than others, but that one, you know, was incredible because it was the first one.
By that time, we had differences of political opinion in the community. It wasn't just the Gay Liberation Front. There were other groups that had formed, you know, after the Gay Liberation Front. So there were some tensions about what the politics were. But on that day, everyone showed up.
See, even back then, you know, we've talked about one of the challenges we have with mapping the modern left is there is an overwhelming amount of organizations. There is an overwhelming amount of activist groups. Like the numbers are not small. They are they're fucking ginormous. And that's part of the challenge of mapping the modern left, because it's like, how do you assimilate that much? How do you exist in a place where like you go down a rabbit hole of one organization and you end up discovering 20 more organizations, and then each of those organizations you discover 20 more organizations, and it just keeps ballooning and ballooning and ballooning. And we have this problem now, but what they're talking about is like even back then they had all of these different organizations, and so it's not a matter of the challenge. I think that the left has always had is that it's not a matter of do they have the numbers? They absolutely have the numbers. It's a matter of the different organizations finding each other and figuring out how to work together to get what they want. Because a lot of times these organizations exist in an echo chamber too. Not everyone on the left knows everyone else on the left. It's too big. And so just because an organization exists on the left doesn't mean that like other leftists know about it, right? You may know about it, you may not know about it, but there are so many and the volume is just so huge that I don't think you can ever make the assumption, unless you have direct evidence that they've worked together, that they even know about each other. So they have to find each other too, and then they have to figure out ways to organize. Some leftist groups have been organizing with each other for decades and decades and decades. Others are just starting to get connected. But the danger is going to come is like, how long is it going to take the left to figure this out? Because the minute that the left figures this out is the minute that they have all the numbers they need to basically do whatever they want. Nope, AI doesn't work like that. It doesn't work like that. It doesn't work like that. It doesn't know this stuff if you don't teach it to it.
I was marching between two guys.
And I'm going to say this too about AI. I'm going to say this too. AI is pushing a lot of misinformation out there, and I know that because I've been using AI to research and edit my book. Do you know how much misinformation there is in AI about the left? It's absurd. The AI gets shit wrong literally all the time. Literally no one should be relying on AI to do research unless you are an expert in the subject and you go and check all the sources. So, or unless you are the one that has trained the AI. I have an AI that I've trained, so it knows more than like average AI, but I'll tell you, even then it's like there's a lot I don't know, there's a lot I haven't trained the AI on. And it still gets shit wrong all the time.
Guys who were wearing nothing but jockey shorts, Hawaiian skirts, and Con Edison caps with flowers. And every time they see some woman, like, you know, going like this, they go, "Mom, hi," you know. And the spirit was just incredible. But when we started marching up 6th Avenue, a lot of the gay people, instead of getting what we thought was going to be like, you know, all the gay people that were standing around joining us, because we kept singing, you know, chanting, "Join us, join us." A lot of people turned their backs.
Homophobia was in full flare. The left didn't particularly like us, you know.
The left didn't.
The new left didn't particularly like us.
The left didn't like us. The new left didn't like us. Oh yeah? They were even fighting in the 60s.
Joining us, because we
or the 70s, I guess this would be now.
Kept singing, you know, chanting, "Join us, join us." A lot of people turned their backs.
Homophobia was in full flare. The left didn't particularly like us, you know. The New Left didn't particularly like us. There were just very small segments that thought that we were a valid movement and that we had any legitimacy in any kind of political sense. So we were, it took a lot of courage, and and we were all acting like hippies, and it was wonderful, and we had our flowers and our balloons. But underneath of that, there was always the fear that something could happen. Someone could be assaulted, someone could be hurt, someone could be murdered.
And you could hear a pin drop. I mean, it was quiet. For the first couple of blocks, it was very quiet. And then all of a sudden, people started clapping. It was this very spontaneous thing. First, it was only a few people, and then it got louder and louder. And by the time we got to 34th Street, all these people were like, they didn't know what it was. Nobody knew. They couldn't figure out what this was. And we were just like, people started joining us, and I guess all these tourists thought it was because they saw the drag queens, They thought it was like a circus. They didn't know, their kids were going, oh, Mom, look at the clowns. They thought the drag queens were clowns and everything.
The GLF notion was to form alliances with other revolutionary groups. People in the anti-war movement, with the Panthers, with the Young Lords, with any Hispanic groups, to develop anarchist communes and to eventually take over society by complete cultural and social change.
Oh, yeah?
It was a pretty naive thing to believe.
Wow.
But we believed it, and we wanted to work towards that. But the dream started to fall apart when the fights all started breaking out.
GLF was a little bit too radical for me, because they were, for every oppressed group, what really brought GLF to a ground halt was they had a debate about the Black Panthers.
You can talk about all the contradictions of the Panthers and all the...
Maybe, you know what? I almost watched some of the protests about this today, Tom, but then they were just talking in Spanish. Like, I literally, the stream today was almost going to be, do we do live protest coverage in DC? But then I was like, you know what? Like, I tuned into, like, a live stream, and they were only speaking in Spanish. And I was like, we're not doing, it is not Spanish Day on the channel. That's not going to happen. So, yep, protests in DC. So maybe we're getting another protest upswing. That'd be pretty great, actually.
Things that were wrong with them, which some people writing books about, and I grant all of that, okay? I didn't see that. What I saw was people empowering themselves and standing up and talking about a vision of a new kind of society. That's what excited me.
They were continually being raided. And you would see on television that these people were dragged out of their home, strip searched in front of TV cameras, lined up in the nude against the wall of their row house.
Wow.
We began to feel these kinds of common bonds between the various parts of the movement.
There were 21 Panther leaders who were arrested and put in jail. $2.1 million had to be raised to get these people out of jail. Somebody came up with a notion that the Gay Liberation Front should contribute to this. I personally thought that was lunacy. Most of the men were into a very macho trip, and a lot of their rhetoric was somebody they didn't like they called a faggot. And I felt like, are we trying to buy their approval? What's the point of this?
The Black Panthers were being murdered by a conspiracy of the United States government, the Pentagon. If you can't kill them, put them in jail. They were killing our people. They were killing them. And something had to be done. Something had to be done. I don't know how to talk about it. I'm sorry, I don't know how to talk about it, except that I wanted them to take a stand when it came to this kind of murder that was going on. And I got into a lot of difficulty with them because I wanted them to contribute money instead of mouth, instead of lip service.
We had a vote, and it was voted overwhelmingly to support the Black Panthers, and that's when the people who later became the Gay Activist Alliance walked out and formed the Gay Activist Alliance, which was a much more conservative group and worked within the system.
It was formed as a class thing. It was formed because of class and because of race. And that is the history of GAA, that they don't, this is the dirty little secret of the gay movement, is how and why.
Okay, I'm going to be real honest. I don't give a fuck what your opinion is. Do you want to know why I don't give a fuck what your opinion is? Because queer Marxists are anti-identity politics. You don't even know that because you probably only listen to bullshit conservative con artists. Queer Marxists are anti-identity. They want no identity groups. So your job right now is to stop talking and to stop pontificating and to listen to what is going on. And I'm going to be and I know people don't like this when I do this. And then people say, Karlyn, you're so mean and I'm not going to watch anymore. The fact of the matter is your opinion is not at the same level as mine is. Your opinion and your ideas are nowhere close to what is actually going on. And the reason that is you have listened to conservative bullshit artists who have lied to you about what is going on, and you do not know the information. The only way for you to learn the information is to shut the fuck up and listen and ask questions, and don't come in and say, here is what is going on for reason X, Y, B, and Z. Your comment has nothing to do with what we're watching right now. Has nothing to do with this. Would you come into someone's classroom and say, excuse me, I don't give a fuck what you're teaching, but I'm going to stand at the front of the room and I'm going to tell you what I think about this completely unrelated topic that I'm also completely uneducated on? If that wouldn't happen in the real world, then it is not going to happen in my chat. You are either here to be a student in my classroom and learn, or you can leave. But we are not going to pretend that your opinion is the same as my opinion, because it is not.
The GAA was formed, and that was because they wanted white power. And so they let the freaks, the artists, the poets, the drag queens, the street people, the street queens, and the blacks, the colored people. You keep the GLF. We're going to go form this thing that's going to change laws. That's a good idea. Change laws, but it was mainly reformist. The vision was broken. The vision
went. It was reformist. Okay, more editing out the music. Gay Activist Alliance, I'll have to look that up.
The Black Panthers, we're going to deal just with issues involving the gay community. And we're going to have an organization that's going to be very specifically focused on that. And that was really the genesis of GAA.
Because GAA set itself up as a single issue organization, you could pull in people from all of the political spectrum. And we did.
We are neither exclusively dry political activity, nor are we empty-headed social people.
We had people from the very far left to the very far right, talking about very, very radical kinds of things.
If an instance comes before this organization where a homosexual has been the victim of systematic oppression to the use of police power, it then falls within the purview of this committee and the organization and is grounds for intervention by this organization on a systematic basis.
The main tactic of the Gay Activist Alliance was total disruption, nonviolent, and that was important to us, but total disruption.
Members of the Gay Activists Alliance, male and female, sang songs and talked with some of the officials of Harper's about an article in last month's issue which they, the homosexuals, considered oppressive.
In specific, there are quotes throughout.
Tiffanel over on Rumble says, if you haven't listened to at least 6 months of Karlyn's research, you don't understand. I have never heard someone as knowledgeable as Karlyn. I am not simping, it's facts. Yeah, it is facts. On this issue, yeah, true.
The article that are very offensive to homosexuals. The use of the words faggot, queer.
A spokesman said the main thrust of today's demonstration was to put this and other magazines on notice that any article they write about homosexuals had better not be oppressive. Otherwise, they too would be picketed.
Most of GAA's actions were formulated around the need for a gay rights bill in City Council. Not that we thought that that would solve everything. We weren't expecting passage. We weren't anywhere near close to passage. But it was, more importantly, it was a good tactic in which to focus the community around and to have a hook for the media.
You cannot hire a person like that as a receptionist or anything, because all you got to do is walk in and see something like that sitting at a desk. You ain't gonna forget about it. What are you kidding? But otherwise, you know, if they're gay, they're gay. What could you do? But you know, they got to support themselves.
This is a private office.
Well, we feel we have a legitimate reason for being here. We
would go into an office or to a politician and just make everything stop. You can get in almost anywhere if you act like you belong there. You just go and you do it, and you don't hesitate.
Yeah, that's true.
You always knew who was going to be handing out leaflets, who was going to be going and inviting the secretaries to join us for coffee and cake.
To attend if you like, free coffee, cake.
It was theater. It was, here we are, we're in your face, and perhaps even at times exaggerate that a little bit.
This is not a question of making appointments. We are here demanding retraction of his slander and demanding that he represent gay people who pay his taxes. And we are not going to take no for an answer from anybody. You want an invitation to our reception? Here, you're invited.
I mean, I think there was a transition with the word, right? Like the word was, and this will be an interesting thing that I should probably look more closely at, is the evolution of the definition of the word queer. And I probably will. I'll do a book about it. It'll be called A Brief History of Queer. Just like we have a brief history of racism, I'll do a book at some point called The Brief History of Queer. From what I'm ascertaining, okay, obviously queer is a word that gay activists reclaimed at some point. But there's still so much confusion about the word because some people do legitimately think that it's just referring to gay people, even though it's not. So the question is, when did queer become specifically an anti-capitalist term? And again, like I know I have a zine from 1964 that explicitly talks about queer as anti-capitalist, but when did that happen is, I think, the question. And I think we can forgive kind of like the normie gay people for misunderstanding the actions of the queer Marxists in terms of like reappropriating that word. But we know now, because we've seen them say it so many times, queer is very specifically an anti-capitalist political ideology. But like what I want to do is trace when did that start to happen and how was it used in these activist communities and stuff like that. So I don't have a good answer for your question. I don't know exactly when it happened yet. I don't know who you are and I don't know what your background is. And if you were there, how old are you? How old are you? Because let's see. 2025. We're gonna do a little game of fun with math. Minus 1964. So you're gonna be in your 60s if you were actually there. Minimally. So how old are you? Who are you and how old are you? No, not what I was asking. Queer Nation came later. Queer Nation was in the 90s. I'm talking about the 60s. How old are you? I know what Queer Nation is. We've covered Queers Read This. How old are you? This is a simple question. Okay, we are not talking about the 90s. We are talking about the 60s. We are talking about substantially earlier than that. This is why we listen. We are not talking about the time period that you are talking about. We are talking about a substantially older time period.
Yeah, it's very, we say gay or homosexual. The thing is that the word fairy teaches a lot of people who are sitting out watching television now across the country that there's something wrong.
Okay, how old are you? Because you just said you were living in San Francisco in the 90s. How old are you? Can you answer this question or not? We're waiting. We're waiting. This is not a hard question to answer. How old are you? And if you don't think I'm giving you another follow-up question after this to test your knowledge based on how old you tell me you are insane. You want to come into... No. You are answering my question. I am not answering yours. How old are you? You are in my classroom right now. We are trying to teach... You're 54, and you were not there when it happened. You are in my classroom right now. You are not teaching me anything. I know all of this. I have been studying all of this for years. I don't mind hearing feedback from people, but not when those people are not listening to what is going on and, quite frankly, don't know as much as I do. You were absolutely, unequivocally not there during the time period that we are talking about. It is not possible. It is not possible that you were there. So now your job is to shut it, ask questions if you have them, but your job is not to teach us anything right now.
Wrong with them that they can be laughed at. They're one of the only groups left in this country that it still seems to be safe to laugh at.
It's very important to know that half of us gay people are women, and that women, when gay people are talked about, usually only men are talked about. And we're here too, and all women should know that.
Nat Rockhill was our vice president. She was our token lesbian. She wasn't chosen for that, but that's what she was. I mean, so there was a lesbian in the leadership of GAA.
We were largely a group of white middle-class men, not exclusively. There's certainly important exceptions to that.
Thank you.
We came in with all of those prejudices or all those ways of looking at things, that kind of understanding, that view of the world.
I'm not trying to make you feel bad. One of the things that we've learned on this channel with people in the chat, and welcome. I'm glad you're here. I'm glad new people are here. I'm glad you're contributing, by the way. But the thing of it is what you have to understand is we are studying this in a very, very pragmatic way. And we are not doing this thing where people come in and offer their feelings and perspectives because, quite frankly, the vast majority of people who come into my chat don't know what the fuck they're talking about. They have no idea. I don't know who you are. I know you've only been to a couple streams where you're participating in the chat. If I don't know you, then I have to make the assumption that you don't know what you're talking about because so few people outside of the people who have been studying this with me for years actually understand it. That's not to say you weren't there for relevant pieces of it. Queer Nation is absolutely a relevant thing that happened. We read Queers Read This on the channel a couple weeks ago. We know all this stuff. If we were talking about the ACT UP movement, I would totally want your experience with being there and things that you know. That's just not what we're talking about right now, and that has to be acknowledged, okay? So I'm not trying to make you feel bad. I'm glad that you're here, but we have a certain way we do things, and I am at the top of the hierarchy on my channel. Tiffanel over on Rumble says Karlyn doesn't do opinion. That's exactly right. And by the way, I don't do my opinion either. So I don't hold myself to any different standard than anyone else. I'm not pontificating around just my opinion either. Everything that I say, I have documented on video.
Conscious of the oppression of Black and Latino and Asian people or women. They felt like drop your life and be a part of what we're a part of because we say so. And we couldn't drop our lives because our lives were already about a struggle of oppression. We know this fight already. This is no new fight for us. But it was a new fight for them. So this is my fight. This is our fight. Everything else stops because I'm on the line now.
Philosophically, when we challenged groups like GAA on racism and sexism issues, we were generally thrown out of the meetings. That's why my experience of GAA was being asked to leave the meeting, basically.
Wow. The struggle session existed even back then.
After this happens a number of times, you find that people tend to not come back again, and we didn't.
True.
Calling out to everyone across the nation. Say the world today is in a desperate situation. Stealing, burning, fighting, killing, nothing but corruption.
I had found out that there was a new group coming. They'd named themselves South of Soul. And that's important because they wanted to connect the Latino and the Black women together. Went into the meeting, and this woman, who was nothing to me sexually, grabbed me and hugged me. Well, I must have pushed her. I was like, what is her problem? And my idea was like, oh, so this is what this is about. You know what I mean? This is what this organization is about. And I was suspicious in the beginning. And what she did is she grabbed me and hugged me every time until I realized that she didn't want my body. You know what I mean? That she wanted me to relax. And I did. I knew this was it. And it had a serious snowball effect because there was no place else for women of color to go to and sit down and talk about what it meant to be a Black lesbian in America.
I don't know the answer to that, Pete. It's a good question. Oh, we're back to no music. This sucks. Look, it's just like Queers for Palestine. It's an early version of Queers for Palestine. The Rainbow Coalition, I've got stuff about them. Anti-racist lesbians, the Rainbow Coalition. Wow. See, you guys think that anti-racism started with Ibram X. Kendi? Oh no. Oh no. We have lesbians for anti-racism back in the 70s. And that's kind of like an ongoing theme that I've been finding in like a lot of this research, and like it drives me insane how long this stuff has been going on. Just out there right in the open. They've been doing this for literally decades and decades and decades, and no one seemed to notice. You know, most of this stuff, like I hear from people all the time. I get all these comments. This started with Obama. No, it didn't. It started before Barack Obama was even born. And it's like, We are never going to be able to dig ourselves out of the hole that has been created by the right being completely ignorant of history. And by the way, I don't blame normie conservatives for this. I know that we can say that people should take responsibility and stuff like that, but the fact of the matter is there is an entire influencer class, journalists, pundits, commentators, YouTubers, whatever. There is an entire influencer class on the right whose literal job it is to teach people about this. I don't blame normal conservatives who just rely on their influencers and opinion leaders to inform them. They watch Fox News thinking they're getting informed. They listen to The Blaze or The Daily Wire thinking they're getting informed. They listen to Megyn Kelly or even Tucker Carlson or Candace Owens or any of these other people, like literally any major person. They're listening to these people believing they're going to be informed. They listen to Mark Levin thinking he knows what communism is because he's written books on it, so shouldn't he know what it is? They listen to Glenn Beck because he's written a million books about a million different things. Shouldn't he know what this is? And it's like, no, they don't. I'm sorry, they don't. They think they know. They may have bits and pieces. They may have nuggets of information here and there, but overall, they honest to God have no fucking idea. And this is the thing that really blows my mind. It's like anytime I'm working on this type of research, I'm like, am I literally one of the only people that's gone back and actually researched this stuff? I'm pretty sure I am the first person to research queer Marxism in this way. Not that the left hasn't talked about it for years, by the way. The left has literally been talking about this stuff and writing books about this stuff for decades. That's actually making the research easier, by the way. The left has been documenting their entire activism history all along. But no one on the right bothered to read what the activists on the left were saying and doing. And so even though all this information is out there, I continue, like, I know, like, it feels like I know people think I'm patting myself on the back, but I really don't mean it that way, because it's really actually very difficult for me to believe that I'm the only person that's ever researched queer Marxism in the way that I'm researching it. That is a mind fuck to me of epic proportion, but I can't find anyone else. I have literally been searching for years, trying to find people studying this topic in the way that I have. I have reached out to professors I've reached out to professors that, like, you know the names of because they have shows and stuff like that, but they're also actual college professors, and they never write back. I don't think there's anyone else doing this research. And it's like, so much of this is so much older and so much more embedded than we have any ideas. The left isn't doing anything new. The left wasn't doing anything new after Obama got elected. They were literally just recycling strategies that they've been using for literally decades. And when you go back and you watch stuff like this, you're like, oh, they were doing this anti-racist shit all along. Literally. They were literally doing this anti-racist shit all along. You think anti-racism just started with Robin DiAngelo? No, 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 no. No, no. They were literally doing this all along. And no one was paying attention. And no one's bothered to write it down. And no one's bothered to tell this story because they're too interested in dunking on the libs. It's mind-boggling. It really is. Average person, the pat on the back was earned, though. Well, I didn't even mean to earn it, though, is the thing. Like, I never intended to do this, but then it's just, it blows my mind. It really does. It's like, where were all of you? And why aren't you listening? Anyway.
There was a time when if you were a black person and you had a light skin and you had whiter features, you therefore were more acceptable. You were considered a more desirable black person, even within the black community. Now, what I'm really asking you is, within the homosexual community, is there an image that the manly homosexual is at the top of the heap? He's the guy who can fit easily into both worlds, and therefore he is king homosexual.
Yeah, I would say so.
He's the most attractive.
I don't like that at all.
I mean, because most homosexuals are looking for a man, and they're looking for what society has defined for them for a man. So here
Is the drag queen then at the very bottom?
Yes.
More or less, yeah.
The drag queen is something we've been stuck with, frankly, because the drag queen makes up about 1% of the homosexual population. I mean, there are thousands and thousands of homosexuals, and you'll have a whole room full of people, and one drag queen will come in, and because that person dresses eccentrically and looks bizarre, that's the one that will get all the attention. And this is from the media. And also it's the only homosexual straight people ever see.
They were into their image. In the beginning, it was fine. You see, when I went to GA, I was not in full drag. I was in full face makeup, hair teased. And I actually was working at that time. I wasn't even hustling the streets. They dealt with that at a level. But the more meetings that I went to, I noticed that I wasn't part of it. And I would never be part of them. And I started to hang out again in the streets and whatnot, and became a street person again, and a hustler and whatnot, and I started organizing my people. And GAA wasn't there to give a helping hand. They didn't want nothing to do with the street people.
Lesbian Feminist Liberation has negotiated for a week and a half.
Listen to her. You listen to everyone else. Listen. That is the least we can do for each other. Listen to her.
Some of the splits which were happening in the gay and lesbian movements, I think, really became apparent during that rally.
All right, it's up to the gay people. What do you want to do?
For one thing, Sylvia Rivera was one of the speakers, and she wanted to talk after Gene O'Leary said something about street transvestites, which was negative.
Y'all better quiet down. Nothing. I've been trying to get up here all day for your gay brothers and your gay sisters in jail that write me every motherfucking week and ask for your help, and you all don't do a goddamn thing for them.
To me, it was so unreal because she's there and she's shouting at all these middle-class guys that look like a college prep fraternity all seated there. I mean, they're all in their 20s and they're all like middle classes. And she kept talking on and on about your forgotten sisters in jail. And it just isn't the kind of thing that people, that middle-class people, that these people that were there had any relationship to at all.
It was ugly. It was really...
I mean, here's the thing. I wouldn't say they're pushing drag more now. I think they've always pushed drag. This is part of one of the things I've been working on in the book. They have literally always pushed drag. So it's not that they're pushing it more now. It's because you're more aware of it now. But that doesn't mean they weren't always pushing it. Drag is explicitly about abolishing gender norms. It's about abolishing the gender binary. The reason they're using drag today, Drag Queen Story Hour specifically, is to teach kids that gender isn't real, that you can change your gender like changing an outfit sort of thing. But they were literally always pushing it. There was never a time in the history of this since like the 60s that drag wasn't a thing.
Ugly at that rally. You really saw the hatred coming out between the men and the women, between the women who wanted to fight just for women's rights, who did not want to in any way be connected with a political group in which transvestites were part of it because they felt the transvestites were mocking women. It just was ugly.
Men and women that belong to a white middle class, white club. And that's what you all belong to. Revolution now! Give me a G! Give me an
When they say white, what do they mean? It's not white skin color. I wrote a whole book about this called A Brief History of Racism. Whiteness meant capitalism back then just as much as it means capitalism now. And what is Sylvia Rivera? This is Sylvia, right? What is Sylvia Rivera, the drag queen that started the Stonewall riots, calling for? Calling for revolution. What do you think that revolution is for? Has nothing to do with skin color, I'll tell you that.
And women that belong to a white middle class, white club. And that's what you all belong to. Revolution now! Give me a G! Give me an A! Give me a Y! Give me a P! Give me an O! Give me a W! Give me an E! Give me a R! Gay power!
I was hurt, and I felt that the movement had completely betrayed the drag queens and the street people.
Again, this is normie gay activism betraying queer liberation. Everyone sees that. The normie gay activists that literally just wanted to get married and assimilate and live normal lives and all this stuff, they didn't want revolution. According to the queer activists, Sylvia Rivera is a queer activist. They're not a normie gay activist. They're a queer activist, even though they may not have called themselves that at the time. The normie gays betrayed the queers because it was assimilationist versus anti-assimilationist.
And I felt that, you know, the years that I had already given them had been a waste. I went home, locked up the house. If it wasn't for Marsha, I wouldn't be here right now. I got 60 stitches in this arm. She came home and found me bleeding to death.
'73.
I think GAA was on its way out before the fire. GAA began a very slow process of disintegration. Remember that also GAA had done a real job already because there were little groups springing up in Queens and Brooklyn. You had your Democratic clubs, your gay Democratic clubs. So, we no longer needed the mothership GAA. When GAA was going, it was the only thing to do on Saturday night.
Ms. O'Leary, could you briefly tell us what the gains have been in the last few years?
Well, there have been tremendous gains in the past, I'd say, 7 or 8 years. We've made major inroads into most of the existing institutions in America. For instance, we have federal legislation introduced in Congress which would prohibit discrimination on the basis of sexual preference in areas of employment, public accommodation, and housing.
Gay liberation started to be professionalized. And these people become professional gay people who lobby for gay rights. They lobby like the sugar lobby, they lobby like the tobacco lobby. This was very, almost antithetical to what we believed in the GLF. The wilder radical groups sort of dissipated, and partly that was a result of the end of the war. The ongoing Vietnam War gave tremendous impetus to radicalism. But when the war ended, students became less radical. What they wanted to do was finish school and get a piece of the pie. And those of us who were radical and wanted change found ourselves pretty isolated.
That's the way, I like it, that's the way, I like it,
To the larger group in the gay community, especially the gay men. Everything, we were free, we didn't have mafia bars anymore, we had discos that were fronted by gay people, we had all this wonderful music, there was no problem. We had freedom, and that's all. And, nobody knew what was on the horizon.
That's the way, I like it, that's the way, I like it,
I believe that more than ever before that there are evil forces that would want to tear down the very foundation, the family unit that holds America together.
A group called Save Our Children was formed, and with Miss Bryant spearheading the campaign against homosexuals, national attention became focused on Dade County.
Somebody had to lead the battle. Somebody had to raise up the battle. Because I want to tell you, we're dealing with a violent, vicious, and vulgar gang.
Okay, we'll go back to the family stuff. Anita Bryant.
On the horizon.
That's the way, I like it,
yeah, save our children. Isn't that funny, Adam? Isn't that funny?
I believe that more than ever before that there are evil forces that would want to tear down the very foundation, the family unit that holds America together.
A group called Save Our Children was formed, and with Miss Bryant spearheading the campaign against homosexuals, national attention became focused on Dade County.
Somebody had to lead the battle. Somebody had to raise up the battle. Because I want to tell you, we're dealing with a violent, vicious, and a vulgar gang.
I believe I have a God-given right to be jealous for the moral environment for my children. I can and do say no to a very serious moral issue that would violate my rights and the rights of all the decent and morally upstanding citizens, regardless of their race or religion.
The stage was set, the media, it was, you could see it, you could feel it, you could hold it, because she just said it. So here was someone that we could point to together in unison and say, this is it. This is what we're talking about. This is the ignorance that we feel daily. This is the kind of stuff that we live daily.
She got all, Jerry Falwell and all these, who was one of these fire and brimstone preachers from Lynchburg, Virginia. And then there was like this big, what she thought was going to be, gays were just going to like, this is terrible, we're going to just shrivel up and die. Well, instead, what happened was people started coming out of the closets in droves. It was like, that was the shot in the arm that we needed. It was like all of a sudden, men and women who had not worked together in years, boy, we got right out there again, and it was like I started seeing all my old friends again, Jim,
Wait, breaking news. Breaking news. This has nothing to do with what we're watching. Marjorie Taylor Greene is fighting with Laura Loomer on Twitter again. And it's hilarious. And so Marjorie Taylor Greene on her personal Twitter account has just retweeted a really psychotic post about Laura Loomer. And Marjorie Taylor Greene said, Laura Loomer viciously attacks and lies about those of us who are President Trump's most loyal original MAGA supporters. She has no long-term relationships because she psychotically turns on everyone. Loomer is the most unstable person and worst liability to ever walk into the Oval Office. Oh, because Laura Loomer is explicitly going after Marjorie Taylor Greene's campaign manager. Wow. Laura Loomer is going after Marjorie Taylor Greene's staff. And so Marjorie Taylor Greene is feuding with Laura Loomer. Okay. Breaking news over. Let's continue. Yeah, the girls are fighting. The girls are fighting. These are two of the most powerful women in the country, guys. Let's just keep going. Okay, fine, whatever.
It was just great.
Millie's laughing. Yeah, meow.
To have a nationwide campaign against us meant that we no longer were private shadows. We no longer were just dirty jokes. That we had begun to coalesce as some political force. So we were seen as a danger in terms of education, in terms of social policy.
This documentary is
So it was, in a way, it was a recognition of our growing social power. We see.
Hang on. What's that? What's that? Every single time. Every single time. Every time. Oy vey. They're always involved. Oy. Mazel tov. Yeah. We love bagels. We love bagels on this channel. No anti-Semitism allowed. Bagels are the best.
We see that we are many, many different people, many, many different communities, different races, different classes, all different interests. But the people who hate us, they see us all as one lump. They see us just as those dykes and those fags, and we'll always be those dykes and fags. And that's why, on some level, we always have to stick together, and we always have to fight together.
All right, part one over. We are going to be continuing with part two. Actually, no, we're not watching part two. Okay, so part two is not available on YouTube because for some reason, but part two of the part two of the documentary is basically just about the conservative backlash. So it's okay that we're skipping it. We are going right to part three of the documentary because that's what we can watch right now. And we're just going to do that. Part 3. There we go.
Don't ask, don't tell.
And not allow the homosexuals.
This is about every American.
Did a promise break the president?
A wonderful world that she found in the Women's Army Corps.
Gays
Say no.
and lesbians are.
Okay, so if this is going to be about gays in the military, so you guys know how we've talked about, okay, again, we have our assimilationist gay rights people that are like Democrats and liberals and progressives. We have our anti-assimilationist queer Marxist people who don't want to be involved in marriage, who don't want capitalism, who want to overthrow the entire thing. In much the same way that queer Marxists did not want to get married and they never wanted gay marriage to be legalized, they also were vehemently against gays in the military. So anti-war was actually a very big thing. I mean, anti-war is a very big thing on the left in general, but I want people to understand as we're going into the gays in the military affair, it was not queer Marxists and queer activists who were arguing for gays to be in the military. They did not want to be in the military. They didn't want anything to do with it. They didn't want any of this. It was the normie LGBT gay rights people who wanted gays in the military. Does everyone understand the difference? Yeah, it's scary that this ideology has been around for so long and most people, including you, didn't have any idea about it. It's been right under our noses the whole time. Yo, bro, I feel exactly the same way. Yeah, I agree.
In the military.
No, that could have been me.
What is the law doing in our bedrooms?
And he said Michael Hart would be under arrest for sodomy. I said, I'm sorry, but why are you in my bedroom?
Because there is no right to engage in homosexual sodomy under the Constitution.
Don't ask, don't tell. Major funding for the question of equality is provided by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting.
A private corporation funded
Additional
by the American
funding is
people.
provided by these
Not
and additional
anymore.
funders.
We don't fund this shit
A
anymore.
complete list is available from ITVS, the independent television service.
Silence equals stat. That was act up. Hollow Liberty. What is this about?
People of the Christian fundamentalists talking about special rights. We're not asking for special rights. We're asking for the same rights any other first-class citizen has, which we at the present time do not.
Who knows who this is? Who knows who this is? Who is Harry Hay? Who has read the first chapter of my Queer Marxism book? Who knows who this is? It's Harry Hay. Well, you look at that. It's Harry Hay. Who is Harry Hay? Reagan. Who has read the first chapter of my book? Yeah, that's Harry Hay, isn't it? Who's Harry Hay? The one who started queer. Harry Hay is the communist that founded the Mattachine Society. He was the founder of the Mattachine Society. It was all his idea. This is the guy who came up with the idea of gay people being a repressed class, and he later got expelled from the Communist Party because he was gay. After 16 years of hiding he was gay, and he even entered into a fake marriage. The communists actually got this guy to marry another communist woman who knew he was gay so he could be in a fake marriage so he could still be a communist organizer. And then eventually he decided to say, fuck you guys, and he got expelled from the Communist Party. But this is the guy that started it all. Nick has also done research on Harry Hay. That's right. Exactly.
Special rights, we're asking for the same rights any other first-class citizen has, and which we at the present time do not have. And this is what Mr. Clinton was being asked to do when he was running for president, and he's out here in California. He promised us he would move in terms of this. So it isn't a question of gays and lesbians in the military at all. It has to be first-class citizenship, which is a much bigger issue.
It's not a question of gays in the military at all, he says.
Make no mistake about it, our patience has been exhausted. We are discriminated against in jobs, in housing, in public accommodations. We're felons in 22 states. The Supreme Court has declared that we have no right to privacy. If that isn't second-class citizenship, I don't know what is.
the record, the CCP is a conservative boogeyman. China is capitalist. The left does not consider China to be communist. China is capitalist. The right are the ones that are freaking out over the CCP. Very few people on the left even interact with anything related to the CCP. So this is another example of the right-wing boogeyman that is a bullshit narrative.
It's necessary that we preserve the law as it is now and not allow the homosexuals to be in the military.
Senator Sam Nunn says no. General Colin Powell says no. The Joint Chiefs of Staff say no. The Pentagon says no. The vast majority of the American people say no.
This is not just about the military. This is about every gay and lesbian in this country. This is about every American. Because the religious right will not be happy just taking away our right to serve the military. They want it all.
I don't think I went into the Navy with any expectation.
Check this out. 68 women are assigned to work on this submarine. And within 6 months, out of 68 women assigned to work on this submarine, 28 of them were lesbians. I know this is all very confusing for people, but it probably shouldn't have been that surprising.
I don't think I went into the Navy with any expectations.
You're telling me that lesbians enrolled in the military? I had no idea that I had no idea that the first women on active duty in the military would be lesbians. That was a completely unforeseen. Come on.
Wanted to get out of where I was. That was the only thing I was basically looking at. And I was 19 years old. And I wanted away from where I was. I wanted to go do something else. And I just really felt like it was time to get away from my family, too, as far as having them always there and always, so much a part of my life. I just really needed to get out on my own.
Not long ago, this was Jean, a file clerk in her hometown. But her mind was far, far away in a world of travel, new friends, exciting jobs. A wonderful world that she found in the Women's Army Corps. Now she's an information specialist assigned to San Francisco. Fascinating city, interesting job, lucky girl. A girl who found a wonderful world of opportunity in the Women's Army Corps.
Can you qualify? See your Army recruiter soon.
My interest stemmed from wanting to travel and not wanting to go back to Chicago or stay in Pittsburgh. So to travel was my main interest.
Being on a ship, and that's what the Navy is, going out to sea, and I'd be a real sailor, and, the whole concept was exciting to me, because my dad did it, my brother's doing it, and I was going to do it. And I went down and talked to a recruiter and got everything filled out, and all of their forms. They ask you whether or not you have homosexual tendencies or not, and you just kind of look at the question and answer it no, of course. My first duty station was in San Diego, and while I was there, the Women at Sea program opened up, and it was on a volunteer-only basis in the beginning. They did not want to force any women to go on board because they wanted us to make it work, and I put in for it. Some of the men were okay with it. A lot of them were not. The guys had to change how they did things, and it was just something I think that needed to be worked with. We would come on board to the ship, go into our berthing, and written up over the berthing was Dyke's Den. So
Dyke's Den.
It was some harassment as far as that's concerned.
Oh, the poor lesbians.
I was on a ship for, I think, a month before the investigation, the investigation started. So it wasn't very long at all.
Yeah. Actually, Nick, I do have a whole section about the radical fairies in the book. So, yes. We should do a deep dive into Harry Hay. Nick can help out with that.
On homosexuality, that was very intimidating because that came so quickly. We didn't know what had hit us. I had gone to Long Beach to go to a doctor's appointment. And when I got back, everybody was talking. And they were pulling women in one by one into staterooms to be questioned by NIS officers.
Basically, what they wanted us to do was sign a piece of paper and say goodbye.
One of the reasons I went to law school was this issue. So when I went to work for the ACLU, I had it in my mind that maybe someday I'd get a chance to do something about this. And I hadn't been there very long, actually. I think I'd been on staff maybe 6 months when a call came in. And a counselor came running across the hallway and said, "We have a person on the telephone, and she says that her daughter is friends with some people on a ship who are being discharged for homosexuality." And I can remember just sitting back in my chair. I knew what it was. I knew what was happening. And I sort of took a breath to sort of calm myself because my heart got really excited. And I went across the hallway and I picked up the phone. And the woman told me that there were 24 women on a ship that were being discharged because they were lesbians. And could I do anything about it? And I remember what I said. I said, "You bet."
One of my accusations was that I had hardcore lesbian pornography under my rack.
One of the accusations against me was for giving someone a back rub when their back hurt.
I don't like perfume, and someone was supposed to have sprayed perfume on me, and I ran and washed it right off.
They're trying to discharge me for reading a sex magazine, you know? I was accused of leaving the ship with one of the females and then coming back on board later on during the night with hickeys covering my neck.
Why do you have to pry into someone's sex life when they show you that their work performance is the only concern that you should have? But the Navy contends that you belong to me. I belong to nobody but myself and God.
Out of 500 crew members, at least 40 people were interviewed by Naval Investigative Services on the day they came on board the ship.
They were all lesbians.
And what they would do is they would ask them what the rumors were of homosexuality. And they would write that down, but instead of writing...
Does anyone have any problem believing that literally every single woman that was accused of being a lesbian was actually a lesbian? Like, just on the face of it, if we just had to say, I wonder if these women looking at the camera right now are actually lesbians or if it was all just fake and they were wrongly accused. And I'm like, no, I'm pretty sure they were all actually just lesbians. And listen, I don't particularly care if people are lesbians. I just think it's pretty obvious that these women weren't framed, is what I'm saying.
It down as a rumor. They would write it down as fact.
They were our shipmates. They drank with us, laughed with us, partied with us, played with us. I don't think they were
misunderstood. I think they were actually
cried with
lesbian.
us.
Yeah, okay.
You're on a ship, you get intimate with people as far as your conversation, and you were betrayed. I look at the people that are making the statements and I just can't see it. To look at them and you sit there and you just wonder what must be going through their head.
Now,
Were they telling the truth?
To be fair, many people think I'm a lesbian, and I am very, 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 very much not a lesbian. So, I mean, maybe I'm wrong. I have more masculine energy as a woman. I understand that, but I'm very much not a lesbian. So maybe I'm just being maybe I'm just stereotyping. That's bad of me. I shouldn't do that.
In my opinion, no.
It's a witch hunt. And anyone, innocent, guilty, or whatever, could be caught up in it. It doesn't matter.
Ever since, Franklin Delano Roosevelt formed the queer catching units in the Navy years ago, they had been massively successful in discharging homosexuals simply faced with rumor allegation.
Yeah, they're all going to
say I was queer in the future.
Like, no, I really do like
big
it.
invasion
like
of
very,
my
very
privacy. And I felt like all the good work that I did while I was in the Navy didn't count. What counted was what I did on liberty on my own time, what people thought was going on. I didn't like it at all.
We were all herded to one of the hospitals in Long Beach, and we all had to have psychiatric evaluations done. It was crazy. It was really crazy, and I felt like an animal or something.
I remember the meeting we had with Susan McGreevy when we first got together and met each other, and I didn't know what I was getting myself into.
It was a small California-style bungalow, and the women were in very tight clusters of friends, all throughout the room and the dining room, and the fear in that room was absolutely overwhelming.
I remember everybody sitting like this, really interested in what Susan had to say.
When we closed the door, I interviewed each alone. Many of them cried when the others couldn't see them.
She saw what was going on, and I think she really wanted to defend it and fight it in a way that would allow everybody to have their rights. A lot of the women were not lesbians.
This was not a case where everybody stood up and said, "I'm gay and don't discharge me." My basic view was this was a case which was about human sexuality and the right to have one's sexual habits remain private.
It was hard for me a lot of times to fight it with the fact that it's no one's business. I agree with that point of view in a lot of ways because I don't feel that it should make a difference. But for me personally, the issue of being a lesbian in the military had been something that I had always wanted to fight.
Women were not allowed to be sexual. And more importantly, they weren't allowed to be sexual in a way which they were non-available to the male personnel on that ship. And there was a whole lot of that aimed at them,
It was the
too.
patriarchy.
The guys that would come up to you and say, or would sit there and say, well, yeah, we'll just kneel down between my legs, and we'll let somebody walk in on us, and then you'll be cleared. And you're going, wait a minute, I don't have to do that to clear me. I haven't done anything wrong in the first place. Susan McGreevy's tactics were to immediately go through the press and to basically fight this through the media, which I feel was the best thing that we could have ever done.
I think this business of mass queer hunting on the part of Naval Investigative Service, which has a whole division which is funded by taxpayers' dollars to do nothing but queer hunt. They open people's letters. The waste of human talent is unbelievable to me. One of the Navy's tactics was to wear us out physically. So instead of holding the hearings in the air-conditioned courtroom that was 400 yards down the way, they put us in a very closed cabin like this. And yet it was in August. It was in the middle of one of the hottest heat waves I can remember in Los Angeles. So that the temperature in the cabin, I would guess, as it moved towards noon, was getting up to 110, maybe more. We would just be sitting in pools of perspiration.
I remember that it was my time to go. I remember being a small room, dark, a round table with lots of men in uniform with accolades in gold. I recall that I was scared to death because it was my career that was on the line. The only thing I remember is the one witness. The question that they asked him was whether they knew of any men that had had sex with Seaman Underwood. He answered yes, one, and they asked who, and he said me. He may have in his mind have thought that he had sex with me, but he did not. But that's what saved me. They recommended retention under that testimony.
We weren't very positive going in. We didn't feel very, very positive about the whole thing at all.
They started the hearings at 7 in the morning, and they ran them till 11 at night, and they refused to allow any break between each plaintiff's case as they came up. So we would have to defend one and then move immediately into the next one, into the next one, into the next one. I believe to some extent that tactic worked, at least as far as Alicia's case went, because 3 days before Alicia's hearing, we suddenly received notice that there was going to be a witness whom I didn't know anything about. And it was a young man who worked in the boiler room. He was going to testify that he had seen Alicia and Wendy having sex down in the boiler room of this ship on a gangway with steam coming from every which direction while the ship was at sea.
Wow.
I don't know really what I felt. I can't recall back to that moment. I think I have a mental block.
The likelihood of a woman of African American descent having been on the ship 45 days, having sex on a gangway in the boiler room of a ship was, in my opinion, about zero. It just, it smelled of racism.
I was not surprised that 8 out of 9 African American women were charged.
Yes, it was all because of systemic racism.
It seems typical of government in certain situations where you have blacks involved.
I can only say that the person who testified against them would not, in a normal courtroom, have had any credibility whatsoever. We were unable to get the evidence that we needed to impeach him.
Someone was going to fall, and we sort of had the feeling that it was going to be us.
Today, a board of Navy officers found 18-year-old Alicia Harris guilty of homosexual activity while a sailor on board the USS Northern Sound.
There was no homosexual acts on the ship ever. I'm not a homosexual, I'm straight. And I figured that they just had to start with somebody. I don't think it was fair.
Alicia Harris never became the college graduate, never fulfilled her plans for her life. That's a loss. That's a significant loss.
I felt betrayed because my intentions going into the Navy were good intentions, and I had plans to do well, and it was like all of those dreams they were just blown away. Everything just happened just crazy, just out of nowhere. It was like darkness just came over instantly.
They finally attained a victory of sorts with Wendy and Alicia's being discharged from the service. And they knew that they didn't have any comparable evidence in the remaining hearings, so they pulled up anchor and they went into retreat. They just dropped them. They said, drop them for insufficient evidence.
The day that I found out the charges were dropped against me, they held a press conference at the ACLU. For me, somehow in my mind, I thought, well, now I can say it. And when I was in the attorney's office and I was in the woman who's in charge of the American Civil Liberties Union down in Los Angeles, and I asked him, I said, can I now? And they both just said to me at the same time, it's like, no, Carol. If you come out now as a lesbian, they'll just bring the charges back against you again.
I'm glad that it's over, or for as much of it that's over as far as it is now. I would have liked to have gone through with my board, though. I feel that it's like just the satisfaction of going through it. I don't feel they would have kicked me out. I don't feel they had enough to kick me out with. Therefore, it's kind of almost a letdown, too, in a lot of ways.
I'm real happy that it's all over. I just wish that, like Carol said, that we would have been able to go forth with our boards, because they don't have any evidence against us, and I don't think they had any against Alicia or Wendy either. And I just wish that things would be different for them.
After the hearing, we all went about our business. The accusations were still flying around. The stigma was still there. The atmosphere on board the ship was no longer safe when you went out to sea. It was a little bit more than I could take. I had wanted to be transferred off that particular ship. I was denied a transfer, and I believe that the Navy felt that my attitude was no longer sufficient for them. I was no longer happy in there, they felt, and as a convenience of the government, I needed to be discharged honorably. I felt like my whole world had been taken away. All my dreams and goals had been stolen from me. It was a tragedy for me. I had to go back home to what? With little training. The most training that I had gotten out of the service was how to defend myself from lesbian accusations. I was out in California, 3,000 miles from my home. I was lost. That was it. Felt my life was ruined at 23 years old.
I'm going to stay right on the Norton Sound. I'm not moving. I'm not going anywhere. I'm staying on that ship.
I have about 45 days left, and right now I don't really know.
After I went through the investigation, I think within myself I realized that there is no way I would ever allow anybody to do this to me again. I really feel that it should have come down to, what my job performance was. And it didn't. They wanted to bring things in that had never happened even on board the ship. So for me, there was no question in my mind there's no way I was going to stay in.
For the first time, people who were charged with being homosexual turned around and fought. We had a meeting right after it ended, and I can still remember those women snapping to for me and saying how proud they were. They were so proud of themselves.
Learned a lot about life going through that. In a way, I
can we get back to
probably
the actual
thank them,
subject of the documentary? Because this is boring and not related to
because I'll
something
never
I care
have
about.
that happen to me again.
Look at all these poor
What they
lesbians
did
who
in the
got kicked out
confines
of
of
the
their
Navy.
own bedroom was their own private business, which I believe to this day is the core of what's being fought here.
I guess I look at a lot of situations in which the government takes an active part, and it's just a confirmation of what I went through, because so many other people are going through a lot of things, and where the government interferes and they preach justice, but there really is no justice.
Okay, 1982.
The Hardwick decision brought the state into the bedroom. Now, of course, it's an absurd law to try to enforce, but that's not the point. The point is that the principal said to gay men that what you do, what your behavior is, or what your lifestyle is essentially against the law.
One of the beauties of Michael's case was that it was a literally perfect fact situation. He was arrested in the bedroom of his own home, having sex with his lover, and it was a situation where it was no money, no minors, no force involved. It was a situation people could relate to. When I'd tell the story, people would say, why, that could have been me.
I was arrested for drinking in public, and I missed the court date. The officer was at my house 2 hours after my court date. It takes 48 hours to process a warrant, but he personally processed this one. I came home like 2 hours later, the same day of my court date, and went to the courts, paid the fine. Well, 22 days
Thanks,
after
Nick,
I'd taken care of it, the arresting officer showed up at my house. I had a house guest that was sleeping on the couch, and the officer knocked on the door, allegedly, and the house guest opened the door. He asked where Michael was. Well, he had been sleeping. He didn't know that I had just gotten home with company, and he said he's probably back in his room. And the door was slightly open, and the officer stood there for about 35 seconds. I looked up, and then he identified himself. And he said, Michael Hardwick, you're under arrest for sodomy. I said, I'm sorry, but why are you in my bedroom?
Michael was arrested in 1982. At that point, there had been a number of people in the ACLU who had been looking for a case to challenge Georgia's sodomy law. It's one of the more draconian, with a penalty of up to 20 years in jail for oral or anal sex.
I believe the sodomy law, sir.
See, this is one of those things. This is one of those things where it's like you're kind of looking at the situation and you're like, okay, maybe the normie gay rights activist had a point. Maybe people shouldn't be going to prison for 20 years for getting fucked in the ass. You might not want to engage in that particular activity, and that's fine. But maybe it's a bit of overreach to put someone in prison for 20 years for getting fucked in the ass. And then you say, okay, maybe the normie gay rights activists had a point, and I think that there were legitimate grievances. And it's kind of like, if you don't acknowledge the difference between the normie gay rights movement, that they're just like, listen, bro, you might not like the way we have sex, but like, it's really none of your fucking business and we shouldn't be going to jail for 20 years. That is a legitimate grievance. What people need to recognize, though, is that queer Marxists, obviously they didn't want to go to jail for 20 years, but their grievances were so much bigger than just, here's the practical things that, you know, we kind of need to change just to make sure that, you know, things are normal.
Serves the state's interest because it is reflective of the public morality. It is at least an aspiration for the state in terms of stating what the morality of the vast majority of people in the state are.
When they brought me to jail, they made sure that they told everyone in the holding cells that I was in there for sodomy and that I should be able to find what I was looking for in there. There was somebody to get me out of jail in an hour, and it took 12 hours for them to get me out. And in the meantime, they were changing me from floor to floor, telling different guards in the jail that I was in there for sodomy, and then they would in turn tell whoever they would put me in the holding cells with. They told me that they were going to have fun with me, and they said that they were going to put me in the pit, which is where they put people that they're detoxifying them, you know, people who are really, really drunk. And they put them in there until they sober up enough to deal with them, and they were talking about putting me in there and how much fun that was going to be, and it was a nightmare.
Michael was a fairly outgoing person who was willing to stand up when it counted. He knew that this case could go all the way, and he was willing to take the heat for it.
The Honorable the Chief Justice and the Associate Justices of the Supreme Court of the United States. The court is now sitting. God save the United States and this honorable court.
The mood in the Supreme Court chambers the day the oral argument took place was quite solemn. We knew the case law, and we knew that Hardwick's claim fell squarely within the line of decisions in which the Supreme Court of the United States had recognized that individuals had a constitutional right to privacy.
What is at stake here is the general question of how sweeping a power government has to control the intimate details of every life in every bedroom in this country.
The way this case was defended by the Attorney General's office was what really was most troublesome to me. Every third word in their brief was homosexual. And this was not a case about homosexuals. This is a statute in Georgia that applies to everybody.
The Georgia sodomy statute prohibited certain forms of sexual conduct. It doesn't mention the fact that the parties are men or women. It doesn't limit the statute to whether or not the parties are married or unmarried. But it very soon became apparent that the courts were going to construe Hardwick's claim as the assertion of a right to engage in what it called homosexual sodomy, even though that term doesn't appear anywhere in the statute.
I'm not sure that I can spell out every detail of our legal argument, but basically it's this. The Georgia sodomy statute is constitutional because there is no right to engage in homosexual sodomy under the Constitution of the United States. Why is there no such right? Well, as the Supreme Court said, anytime someone asserts that certain conduct is constitutionally protected, first thing you ought to do is go to the Constitution itself and look if the Constitution expressly protects that asserted right. In this case, clearly that is not so.
A law cannot be based simply on the fact that some people find the conduct distasteful or that some people find the conduct morally objectionable. The government has to be able to say the conduct in question is harmful. I don't believe that that case has yet been made.
There were a number of troublesome questions, and some came from Justice Powell, who was trying to decide where you drew the line, whether it was just the bedroom, how about a motel room, how about a park where nobody's present, how about a bathroom in a park, where do you draw that line?
The Hardwick case had nothing at all to do with public toilets. So to my mind, the simple fact that one of the justices of the Supreme Court of the United States could ask that question meant that we were in trouble. It was clear that they were in the grip of some very damaging misconceptions, myths, and prejudices about gay men and lesbians in the United States.
We had our day in court, and there was a lot of excitement and a big party afterwards, but I left the courthouse very troubled as to what the outcome would be. I was sitting at my desk and I got a phone call from a reporter who said, "What's your comment?" And I said, "What's the question?" He said, "Well, you just lost in the Supreme Court 5-4 on the Hardwick case." And I said, "Oh my God."
Police estimate the crowd at 1,000 strong, noisy and angry.
This is an asinine decision, and it's an idiotic decision, and more than that, it threatens everyone's rights.
It absolutely galvanized the gay community. There were massive demonstrations and mourn-ins shortly after the Hardwick decision.
In the dissenting opinion that he wrote for the court in Hardwick, Justice Blackmun said that Hardwick had very little to do as a constitutional matter with the right to engage in homosexual sodomy. For Blackmun, the issue in Hardwick was whether Americans have a constitutional right to be left alone. And I think the inability or the unwillingness of the majority in Hardwick to understand the issue in those terms can properly be laid to homophobia.
I just couldn't believe that in this day and age they would make a decision that would turn me into a second-class citizen in the country that I've been raised in.
They are no more a second-class citizen than is someone who engages in incest or rape or any other illegal conduct is rendered a second-class citizen.
How many people do you think got radicalized to the far left because of this decision? Where they were like, "Listen, man, we're just gay. We just want to be left alone. We just don't want you in our bedroom." And I'm not suggesting necessarily that Supreme Court decisions should get decided based on like what the public sentiment is going to be, but I want people to understand the ramifications when the right pushes bullshit like this. How many gay people that literally just wanted to get married and just wanted to be left alone got radicalized to the far left because of this issue? Because they were young and gay when this was decided, and they got involved in these circles and they were doing these protests and all this stuff. None of this needed to happen. Thank you to Ray over on Rumble. Appreciate the $2 Rumble rant. And guys, the exact same thing is about to happen with this gay marriage thing. Lord help us if the gay marriage thing actually overturns gay marriage. Lord help us. And this is going to be one of those instances where conservatives are going to be like, "No one cares about gay marriage. It was decided wrong anyway. They're going to send it back to the states." Do you guys remember when conservatives were convinced that saying, Don't worry that Roe v. Wade overturned abortion. They're going to send it back to the states. You know, really, guys, it's a states' rights issue. Do you guys remember when conservatives thought that that would save the midterms? How did that work out? When Roe v. Wade got overturned, and conservatives were like, "No one cares about abortion. It's getting sent back to the states." And then they thought they were getting a red wave in the midterms, and there ain't no red wave. It didn't happen. The Democrats raised record amounts of money off of it. They registered like all the new voters on college campuses on that issue specifically. I promise you, if this gay marriage thing gets overturned, it's going to be literally exactly the same thing. And quite frankly, even if it isn't overturned, they're still going to use the fact that they're even hearing the case to try to radicalize more people to the left.
The legacy of Bowers against Hardwick is that government can legitimize violence, discrimination, degradation.
Cool. Well, you know, then you guys can remind yourself of this when you lose election after election after election. And you can remind yourself of this when the nuclear family is destroyed and your kids grow up knowing that gender isn't real and all that stuff. Please, guys, when the nuclear family eventually falls, as it absolutely will because of the conservative brain trust that we have on our side, when the nuclear family falls, everyone should just remind themselves, you know, Karlyn, Supreme Court cases really shouldn't be decided based on what the perceived outcome is going to be. We don't mind sacrificing the nuclear family and our entire society to own the libs again. Don't worry. You know, we're just owning the libs over here. I don't know what your fucking problem is. Just because we're going to end up fucking everything up irrevocably for everyone forever, just remind ourselves that, you know, it really shouldn't be decided based on what's going to happen. Okay. Sure. Yup.
On the part of one segment of the population toward another.
This case was important because if who you are is a felon, then it affects radically how you can be in the world, who you can be professionally. It taints forever who you are as a person, and that stigma has got to be removed.
In 1986, I was turning 22. And I remember seeing the Post headline announcing the Hardwick decision, and I was wondering what it meant for me. It was also a time when the AIDS epidemic had just begun, and I was thinking about my sexuality in terms of risk.
What was on that sign? What was on that sign? Hang on.
Announcing the Hardwick decision, and I was wondering what it meant for me. It was also a time when the AIDS epidemic had just...
What's on that sign right there? And I'm betting you that sign says, and liberation and justice for all. Or liberty. Well, I guess it does say liberty. Never mind. I take that back. What's on that sign? That's the pink triangle. That is the pink queer Marxist triangle. That is the upside down queer Marxist triangle. If you see a pink triangle, that is indicating queer Marxism. There have been conservatives recently that have tried to say this is a Hamas red triangle. That's not true. This is a pink triangle. This is a queer Marxist anarchist symbol.
Begun, and I was thinking about my sexuality in terms of risk. I came to consciousness about my sexuality by realizing that some of the kinds of sex that I had placed me at risk for infection to a newly discovered virus. And so I immediately felt even doubly under threat because not only now had some of the sexual practices I'd been engaging in possibly placed me at risk for HIV, but I also felt now policed directly by the law. And it was with that sense of threat that I went to those first demonstrations.
Yep, we're in the ACT UP section now. But I didn't realize that the ACT UP thing overlapped with this sodomy law thing. That's also interesting.
There's a tremendous confrontation now between police and demonstrators. Confrontation that's developed on the steps here. The demonstrators are pushing one way, the police are pushing another way. We're trying to calm it now. This is supposed to be a nonviolent action. The demonstrators are working on sitting down.
It mobilized the community because people were really pissed off because they began to understand that this system was not as tolerant as they had thought it was and was not as sympathetic, and that the forces that were most definitely working to increase the repression of gay men and lesbians were actually being successful.
The same people I saw at the demonstrations around Hardwick were the same people I saw at the first ACT UP meetings. It was an opportunity for young activists like myself to meet older activists.
I'm sorry, what? The same people who were doing the Hardwick protesting were the same people that were at the ACT UP meetings. Imagine our shock that it was all the same fucking people.
to increase the repression of gay men and lesbians were actually being successful.
The same people I saw at the demonstrations around Hardwick were the same people I saw at the first ACT UP meetings. It was an opportunity for young activists like myself to meet older.
So ACT UP came out of this Hardwick, like, anti-sodomy law thing. Okay.
Activists and learn the history of lesbian and gay liberation.
Saw, I think, an increase not just in AIDS activism then, but in gay and lesbian rights activism as well.
What was interesting about the turn from the Hardwick decision protests and the early ACT UP meetings was we went from a defensive position to an offensive position. So instead of just protesting around the repression, we kind of built ourselves up and went forward with our own positive agenda.
Is the year that Queers Read This was handed out at New York Pride, which was like the first, like, well, not the first, but it was like one of the most famous zines that they've ever created, to basically try to get gay people to be queer and be leftist activists and stuff like that. Oh, they didn't even talk about it. That's interesting they didn't talk about that. Oh, because they're doing this military thing, that's right.
If you become president, do you plan to revoke the U.S. military's longstanding ban on gay and lesbians who want to serve their country?
Wow, I remember this. I remember that whole shit.
Here's where I'm coming from on this issue. I believe we don't have a person to waste in America. We need all of you. I believe we're too divided today. So the presumption should be in favor of serving your country unless there's a reason not to allow it. That's the way I think about this.
Some people have said, well, we think the president made a big mistake. He brought it up too early. People should understand it wasn't Bill Clinton's choice to bring it up that early. It wasn't the gay and lesbian movement's choice to bring it up that early. It was a federal judge, Judge Hatter. This issue, if people will go back and look at the newspapers in November and December of 1992 after the election, this issue became a front page, top of the hour story when Judge Hatter held that Keith Meinhold had a right to stay in the military.
I had grown over a period of number of years to love the Navy. I liked it right away, but I really thought I was part of the Navy. And in fact, even when I'm out of the service, I don't think I could ever take the Navy out of me. I mean, that's who I am. It's part of me more than anything else. So when I came to terms with my sexuality, I was caught in a position because I wanted to stay in the Navy, wanted to do my job, and yet they wanted to kick me out, and I was gay. And I didn't know what to do. I could either hide my sexuality and hope that they would never catch me, but that in addition to feeling dishonest seemed somewhat implausible. And so the only option I had left was to do something about the policy. November 12th of 1992, I was returned to service in the military. I actually tried on November 6th, but they wouldn't let me in the gate. Luckily, the judge hauled the military into court and said he would hold them in contempt if they did not return me to service, and they did.
Shortly after 8, Meinhold appeared outside the gates of Moffett Field, besieged by the media.
I think we have a little history on our hands that gays and lesbians will be able to serve openly in the military and not worry about somebody persecuting them.
Then he made history. Meinhold walked through the gate and became the first openly gay service member to be reinstated in the military.
I think the fact that the story was covered kind of started the firestorm around the gays in the military issue. That, coupled with the president's promise to lift the ban, added to the fire.
It's not simply the right of homosexuals at stake, it's also the right of all of those men and women
who serve in the military. We have fought for our country. We have died for our country. This is not about special rights for anyone. It's about equal rights for everyone.
Sodom is against the law anyway. It's not only indecent and wrong,
that's who that is.
but it will cause many mothers and fathers to want their sons and daughters not to go into the military.
My position is that I still think the presence of homosexuals in the force would be detrimental to good order and discipline for a variety of reasons, principally relating around the issue of privacy.
If the military establishment doesn't get it, if the members of Congress who are reluctant don't get it, we are going to make sure everyone gets it, and they will be forced to commit to justice for all the people of this country.
The grassroots support within the gay community on the effort to lift the military ban, I think, was mixed at best. Lots of people in the gay community believe that why should we fight to lift the ban? We don't believe in the idea of serving in the military to begin with.
As a person with AIDS, I felt that...
What did I say? What did I say? The normie LGBT people are the ones who wanted the service in the military. The queer Marxists are like, what the fuck are you guys talking about? We don't even want to be in the military. Wow. And there it is. There it is right there.
In the gay community believe that why should we fight to lift the ban? We don't believe in the idea of serving in the military to begin with.
As a person with AIDS, I felt that the shift away from AIDS as a primary issue to a focus on the military was threatening. Myself and many of my peers and people in the AIDS activist movement felt or feared abandonment by the community. Not only had energy gone from the AIDS activist fight to the fighting the ban on the military, but money.
See, and this is the argument that the queer Marxists always make. They're basically the argument that the queer Marxists make against the normie gay activism is like, listen, guys, we have a limited amount of money and we have a limited amount of resources. So you guys are spending our money and using our resources to fight for stupid things. You're fighting for us to get married when we don't want to get married. We're anti-assimilationists. You're fighting for us to go in the military. You're doing all this stuff. We don't want to go in the military. So why the fuck are you wasting your resources on fighting for these things that have nothing to do with what we actually want? That was the fight. The normie gay people wanted gay marriage and gays in the military. The queer anti-assimilationists didn't want any of this, and they were constantly fighting about, why are we doing this? Why are we taking resources away from the ACT UP movement, which was a fight against capitalism, because it was all about the healthcare system being capitalist and blah blah blah, like whatever. Like the ACT UP movement was their pure queer militant uprising against the capitalist establishment, and they're like, you idiots are taking resources away from the ACT UP movement to fight for this stupid military shit that we don't even want to do. Do you guys understand the difference? This has been going on since the beginning. Do you ever get tired of being right all the time? No, I don't. No, I'm right about every single thing that I say when it comes to the left. I am undefeated in terms of being right about this stuff. On the left, I'm not right about every single topic under the sun, God knows, but on this topic, I am right 100% of the time. Listen to them say that resource thing again.
The AIDS activist movement felt or feared abandonment by the community. Not only had energy gone from the AIDS activist fight to the fighting the ban on the military, but money. There was a real concern around resources.
I believe it was simply too difficult for people to feel that the question of the military ban spoke to them in as compelling a way as all the other issues that the great masses of gay men and lesbians face daily.
I actually never came down one way or another around fight against the ban. I saw it as having its value pragmatically in our culture. The military being the United States' largest employer was a perfect focal point, pressure point to focus on and push for change. But I also recognize that it was a very short-sighted approach to achieving our goals.
This is the U.S. military that has run. I'm Puerto Rican and consequently Latin American. The U.S. military has run rampant through Latin America for centuries. Why would I want anyone, part of my community, to be in the military? And yet that focus, came up and people focused on gays in the military. Where is that going to take us? That's not going to help us.
Many of the activists in the gay community are very... It's a big personal conflict within themselves. Though they want gay civil rights, they really find it very difficult to support the military in any way. And that's been a chief reason for this indifference and sometimes antagonism towards this subject.
Trying to defeat the ban on gays and lesbians in the military was important from the standpoint of defeating homophobia in general, because the anti-gay and lesbian military policy is today the only explicitly anti-gay policy the federal government has. That's why it is in part so important.
Every single study since 1957 that has been conducted by the Pentagon itself or by the investigative arm of Congress has concluded that there is absolutely no basis for the ban.
The reason you don't understand this is that you don't understand the left. That's why you don't understand this. Do you think these were the same groups of people? Do you think that you still seem to be confused? We are not talking about Democrats. We are talking about communists. The people who were screaming about the injection were Democrats. They were not communists. They are not the same groups of people. They do not have the same belief systems. And I feel like you've been watching enough of my content that you should know by now that Democrats and communists are not the same thing, but you're still making this mistake because you want to own the libs because it feels good and then you feel morally superior. I just don't get why all this screaming happened and then they took the shot. They weren't the same groups of people. They weren't the same activists. They weren't the same values. Democrats are not the same as communists. That's why.
And on gays and lesbians, and in fact that it is incredibly wasteful.
I think to say that the campaign to lift the military ban against gay men and lesbians was an instance of assimilationist politics is too simple. The fact of the matter is that in any...
He's actually using the term assimilationist politics. That's how you know that guy knows what's up. The people who actually call it assimilationist versus anti-assimilationist politics, those are the people who know what's going on.
Military ban against gay men and lesbians was an instance of assimilationist politics is too simple.
It's not too
simple. The fact of the matter is that in any nation, those citizens who can and are willing to serve and fight and die, if necessary, for their country, ought to be allowed to do so.
Okay, I'm going to retract my statement. That guy doesn't know what's up. He doesn't know what... The problem with that guy is he's been around... He understands that the argument against fighting the gays in the military thing is an anti-assimilationist thing. He doesn't understand what that means. So he's saying... I don't know why you're saying it's not assimilationist I don't know why you're saying it's assimilationist to want to fight for gays in the military. He's saying that because he doesn't understand the assimilation. He understands the words, but he doesn't understand what the words mean. Does everyone understand the difference? He's heard the words. He's heard the words from the queer activists. This is assimilationist. This is assimilationist. This is assimilationist. He's probably got dragged over the coals by these people for pushing assimilationist policies. So he understands the words. He just doesn't understand what the words mean. This is exactly the mistake that conservatives make all the time. He said it was too simple because he doesn't understand what the words mean. This is what I'm explaining. Explicitly. He doesn't speak the language. He's heard them say it. He doesn't understand what they mean. And he's confident in his arrogance, just like conservatives who don't know what the fuck they're talking about.
Against gay men and lesbians was an instance of assimilationist politics is too simple. The fact of the matter is that in any nation, those citizens who can and are willing to serve and fight and die, if necessary, for their country, ought to be allowed to do so. In many ways, it's at the core of what it means to be a citizen.
Yeah, if you have a homosexual, you never know where his thoughts are, or especially down in the birthings. They don't let men and women together just for the simple fact that that's going to cause problems. If they leave men and men together, I wouldn't feel comfortable sleeping, with a guy who's a homosexual 3 feet above me or 3 feet below me, or going to take a shower knowing that, there's homosexuals around.
The whole idea that it is this incredible, unbelievably rare and upsetting occurrence to step into a shower with a homosexual person next to you is just wrong. But the issue is, do they know there's a gay person next to them? That's the sort of subliminal and I think the true issue.
I'm 53 years old, and I have not been getting myself dry cleaned for
Hang on. Can I ask a favor? Can someone give me the connection between the far left and why they want to destroy the family? Karlyn has said it multiple times. I can't remember. Hey, I appreciate you asking the question. Okay. The ultimate goal of the far left is always and forever to abolish capitalism. Every single thing the left does is about abolishing capitalism. Capitalism is not just an economic model. Capitalism is also a cultural model. When it comes to the nuclear family, what you're talking about is a cultural model of capitalism. The nuclear family is a privatized family unit because the resources within the family, like your land and your money and your houses and your things like that, they are only available for the exclusive use of members in the family. That makes it a privatized unit that is outside of the collective. Privatization is what capitalism is. Capitalism means private property ownership. So the nuclear family is also a way that you can pass private property from parent to child, again, thus keeping it out of reach of the collective. The reason it's important to understand this is that you have to understand that the left believes that as long as the nuclear family exists, capitalism, capitalist values, private property ownership will always perpetuate because of the nuclear family. There are other arguments too around healthcare and community care and stuff like that. But at the core of the issue, capitalism means private property ownership. The nuclear family, the private nuclear family, a monogamous relationship. It could be two men, it could be two women, it could be a man and a woman. It doesn't really matter. What matters is a monogamous private relationship in which resources are consumed with an exclusive community within that family unit. Okay? And that property is passed down. These are the capitalist values that perpetuate the capitalist system. Having children and raising them in a nuclear family raises children with capitalist values, thus perpetuating capitalism. In order to overthrow capitalism, they need to disrupt what they call the social reproduction of it. This is all about social reproduction theory. The idea is that social systems will continue to reproduce those systems until they're disrupted. They need to disrupt the nuclear family in order to overthrow capitalism. Does that make sense? Let me know if you have questions.
Most of my life, I have been taking showers very often in the presence of straight men, in gyms, in locker rooms, in a whole range of contexts. I do not understand why people think that they have never taken showers with gay people if they have ever ventured outside their own bathrooms.
I think the obsession with showers in the debates over the lifting of the ban represented a real degradation in the public discourse and a deflection away from what was really at stake.
For women in the services to hear this much angst and anxiety and terror from these big, strong military guys who can't stand the idea that a guy next to them might or might not be having a thought, it's just preposterous, because women deal with spoken thoughts and harassment of the exact same nature all the time. And now the men who run the military are scared that that same sort of roving sexual eye is going to be directed at them, and they can't stand it. They're going to try and keep gays out of the military rather than ever be perceived of as a sexual object. It's absolutely analogous. But when it's men that might be looked at unwelcomely by other men, it's a national catastrophe. We have to have Senate hearings. We have to send senators down into the submarines to say, aren't you uncomfortable with a man that might be gay looking at you? And the military women are like, my God, this is our entire life, is we're having men who we're not attracted to, who we're not comfortable with looking at us.
I have been back in the military now for over a year as an openly gay man. And certainly I've had to live in the barracks. I've had to take group showers. No big deal. I take my shower, I get done with it, I go. And if somebody felt uncomfortable being in a shower with me, all they gotta wait is about 2 or 3 minutes. I mean, it's not a big problem. It's a big fear argument, and it's really convenient for bringing up the stereotype as a homosexual predator.
The bigoted argument in the military debate did not say that we were bad people, that we were security risks, that we would be emotionally unstable. Now that's interesting, because 30 years ago, that's what you would have heard. The argument would have been, what? Those people in the military, they're all neurotic, they'll be crying, they'll run away from battle. The argument was really fairly more refined. It was simply this, straight people don't like them, therefore we can't have them in.
We have a distinction between something that a person is born with and a chosen conduct. I know of no medical study anywhere that has validly proved that people are born homosexual. It's a question of choice.
I think color and gender are both benign physical characteristics, as the generalists say, that someone's born with. They don't involve a behavior that has the potential to affect other people and the people around them.
People said, well, why didn't the president just give Colin Powell an order? He could have given Colin Powell an order, and Colin Powell would have abided by the order. That is, if he said, integrate the military immediately, it would have happened. On the other hand, Colin Powell would also have told people in Congress that he opposed that, and Congress would have unfortunately overturned it. By May, it was clear to me that we had been defeated in the organizing effort. We had lost. And Sam Nunn then began talking about his version of what he called don't ask, don't tell. And I decided to propose an alternative because it was clear to me then that we would lose and that none would dictate the terms of the compromise.
In making his announcement, Clinton drew applause from the military brass. And no wonder. He had backed off his pledge to lift the ban against gays in the military.
The policy I am announcing today is, in my judgment, the right thing to do and the best way to do it.
Disappointed probably is not a strong enough word in the Clinton administration. We might as well have the Reagan or Bush administration in there. In fact, I kind of wish they were there.
You mean they thought that Democrats were no different than Republicans? Imagine my shock.
Because there's not this facade that we have a friend in the White House.
The Clinton administration today is now ushering in a new era of discrimination in America. I believe that Congressman Frank thought it was in the best interests of the community to compromise. I still believe that he was premature. I still believe we didn't get anything. In fact, we got a federal law.
So when that person is asked, did you say I am a lesbian? Say I was asked. I would have to either say, I am not a lesbian, I will have to contradict my previous statement, or I would have to say, I am a lesbian, but I'll never engage in any lesbian act.
For me, perhaps the most troubling feature of the don't ask, don't tell policy is that it endorses the irrational fears and prejudices that one group of people have about another group of people and allows the state to discriminate against a group based on nothing more than paranoia, stereotypes, and irrational bias.
I don't know whether the don't ask, don't tell policy is going to help this at all. I think that what it will do is give commanders in their own command units an incredible amount of discretion. Before, they had discretion. But now, their discretion has been so far expanded with regard to gays and lesbians that I'm fearful. There's another trend from the new policy, too, that I find extremely disturbing, which is giving people general discharges when there is no allegation of conduct at all. It's a status discharge that someone has stated that they're gay or lesbian, and they're getting general rather than honorable discharges. Now, even under the old policy, we were able to stop that from happening. We were able to force them to give people the honorable discharge they deserved.
What I see in the future is that we're going to be in the courts. We haven't had a political response to this issue that's been very favorable. It's kind of the standard in civil rights issues that you can never resolve them in politics. They're historically always been resolved in the courts. Because we're talking about the Constitution of the United States. It basically says everybody's created equal.
Societies where the prejudice is wholly ingrained don't have debates about it. It would not have been possible to have had a debate about gays in the military 30 years ago. The society's prejudice against us was so wholehearted and total that the arguments would have been laughed off. I believe that 20 years from now, this debate will look equally laughable.
I think by making the ban the primary focus of our activism, we lose sight of some of the larger goals of sexual liberation. It leads us down a path where we have to say that we are like everybody else. We are no different than anybody else. We should be included by virtue of the fact that we are the same as everybody else. And the primary principle of lesbian and gay liberation and sexual liberation in general was difference. We should fight for the right to difference.
The bottom line is that we lost. And I think the lesson we ought to take from that is that for people in the halls of power, the effort to make ourselves look like them finally makes no difference. We saw in the media a group of people who were overwhelmingly white, male officers. And yet the reality is that the discriminatory policies of the military strike disproportionately women, and especially women of color.
I think what did come out of the effort in the campaign to lift the ban was an unprecedented educational vehicle in which we put a face to our issue of being gay and lesbian in America.
It's my firm belief that until we lift this ban and stop putting gay and lesbian people in prison for the mere status of being gay or lesbian and ruining their careers and saying that they can't do ROTC or any of the other kinds of educational and economic opportunities that the military offers, until we stop that discrimination, I don't see how we're going to have a federal civil rights bill.
We have a dual problem as a gay and lesbian community. Not only have we been subjected to legal discrimination, but we have been culturally pulverized. We're trying to find ourselves, find our culture. We're trying to engage in the kind of cultural self-expression that we have been prohibited from doing. And for us, the cultural self-expression is also a political act. Because when you have been despised and told, shut up, hide, we'll tolerate you barely if you just deny who you are, then simply saying who you are becomes political. We're the only group for whom coming out is a political act.
I think our great strength is to show to the American people the diversity of gay men and lesbians in this country. That we are literally everyone, and that we are quite literally everywhere. That we're black, that we're white, that we're Asian, that we're men, that we're women, that we're poor, that we're rich, that we're educated, that we're illiterate, that we represent the full spectrum of the American body politic itself.
Well, that looks like the end of that. Now, listen, there is a part 4 to this, and I do want to watch part 4. I just don't want to do it tonight because it's taking too long. And there is a movie night tonight with Mac B. Mac B, remind me what movie you're showing tonight in the supporter Discord. So movie night with Mac B starts in about 40 minutes. We don't have enough time to get through another section. So here is what I want to do. I do want to finish watching this documentary. I want to do it tomorrow. So tomorrow we're going to watch the next part of the last part of this documentary, which I think is going really well. I also have something that Reagan sent me that I think is actually related to this that I think will be really interesting to watch, which is about a 20-minute video about gay assimilation, which is definitely related to what we're talking about. So we'll watch both those things tomorrow. I think that'll be a nice little episode for tomorrow. And so that is what we're going to do. Let's see. I hope Mac B is in the chat. I think he's watching Machete tonight. I think that might be what he's watching tonight. Let me see if it's in the Discord. Let me just check real quick. I do want to encourage all supporters in my community to check out movie nights in the supporter Discord. If you want a link to movie nights, what you do is you go to the supporter. You go to my main Substack, karlyn.substack.com. Go into the chat. You're not going to be able to see it here. If you go into the chat and you're subscribed to the channel, you will find a message in the chat about joining the supporter Discord. So the supporter Discord is where we do movie nights on Sunday night. It's at 8 p.m. We also do them on Monday nights at 9 p.m. Pretty sure Mac B is watching a cult classic with Machete tonight. I do want to encourage everyone, make sure you're checking out movie nights. Movie nights in my Discord are super fun. They do trivia. They do music related to the movie. Mac B picks out some great movies to watch on Monday nights. And so I definitely want to encourage everyone to go. Yeah, this doc has given me another 10 tabs open in my browser. It is a perpetual state of being, isn't it? It is perpetual. It is Machete tonight. Okay, so that's going to be at 9 p.m. in the supporter Discord. I want to encourage everyone to go. And that's all we're going to do for today. That's it. I think that's enough. So remember, guys, mount the like button on the way out the door. Please make sure you are subscribed to the channel if you're not already. And I will be back at 5 p.m. tomorrow. And we'll watch the last part. Okay, guys, take care. We'll see you soon. Bye.
How are you feeling? How long have you been here? 3 months, May 17th. And what brought you? That's difficult to answer.
how is it that playing the piano for people has eventually resulted in your being here in the hospital?
That's difficult to answer.